Chapter 1360. Whoosh! Withstanding the whistling atmosphere, Noah's body turned into a ray of light and soared into the sky. In the blink of an eye, he arrived high in the sky and looked at the horizon. Roar, 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 roar. The huge dragon head that peeked out from the sky that had been split into two was still roaring. Just this alone had formed a storm that was comparable to a disaster, bathing the entire blazing flame capital in the violent storm. It seemed like it could be blown away at any time, and it was on the verge of collapse. Nobody knew whether it was disdain or deliberate, but the huge dragon's head didn't seem to have any intention of charging down from the clouds. It was only roaring there. If the huge dragon really wanted to attack Raging Flame Capital, then it only needed to charge toward Raging Flame Capital, and Raging Flame Capital would be turned into ashes. After all, just the head of the huge dragon was already comparable to the size of an entire city. Then, how big was the body of the huge dragon that was still in the clouds? Just thinking about it was enough to make people tremble. If that was the case, the people in Raging Flame Capital should rejoice. Rejoice that the huge dragon didn't attack Raging Flame Capital. However, it shouldn't be that the huge dragon didn't want to attack. Instead, it should be that it didn't want to attack for the time being. Noah could tell. Although that huge dragon was a pure-blooded dragon species, it didn't have any intelligence or intelligence. Speaking of which, why would a pure-blooded dragon species appear in Letitia's game? Why would Letitia be swallowed by that huge dragon? I still don't know the reason behind these. Noah raised his head and looked at the huge dragon that was letting out a world-shaking roar. His eyes were filled with uncertainty. Could it be that the main body of that huge dragon is actually, just when Noah had some guesses in his heart, another figure flew out from Raging Flame Capital. Accompanied by a burst of black wind, the figure arrived beside Noah. Who else could it be other than Pest? Pest was holding the pitch-black contract in her hand. Her complexion was pale as she looked at the huge dragon that covered the sky. Then, she turned her gaze and looked at Noah. Her voice was hoarse as she spoke. Has Letitia's game been restarted? It would appear that Pest also knew about the matter regarding Letitia. Noah did not answer Pest's question. Instead, he stared at the roaring dragon and spoke in a low voice. How's the situation in Glorious Flame Capital? Shadora and Mandela seem to have defeated the Demon King controlling the giant tribe. They have split up to deal with the giants wreaking havoc in the city. Pest was silent for a moment before answering truthfully. In addition, Letitia and I have defeated many giants before this. The defeat of the giants is only a matter of time. Hearing this, Noah stared at the gigantic dragon that covered the sky and said, in other words, all that's left is to solve Letitia's problem, right? That's right, Pest answered subconsciously. Then, she seemed to have realized something and was shocked. Do you want to fight that pure-blooded dragon? If that was the case, Pest could not help but feel astonished. That was a pure-blooded dragon, an existence known as one of the three most powerful races. Conservatively speaking, an existence like that was at the apex of the 4-digit number. It might even be a terrifying existence in the 3-digit number. Fight against such an existence? Ignoring everything else, if Pest were to fight against such an existence, even if she possessed the body of a god, she would still be torn to pieces in an instant. She would be deader than dead. How could one possibly fight against such an existence? Of course, with the strength that Noah had displayed earlier, he might really be able to fight against that gigantic dragon. However, in Pest's opinion, there was no solution more foolish than directly fighting against the strongest species right from the start. The urgent matter at hand was not to think about how to fight against such an existence. Instead, it was to take advantage of the fact that the other party had yet to launch an attack to defeat the giant tribe and then think of a way to solve the game. Since the gigantic dragon appeared together with the game that Letitia held, the gigantic dragon should also disappear when the game was solved. That was the most suitable method for now. Naturally, Noah understood that. However, at a time when he still did not know how Letitia was doing, leisurely sitting down and thinking about how to solve the game's puzzle was something that Noah could not do. At the very least, he should confirm whether Letitia was doing well or not. Thinking up to this point, Noah turned his gaze and looked in another direction. It was a castle floating in midair above the gigantic dragon. A castle. Noah's eyes flickered. Could that be the ancient city of the vampires? Noah had heard Letitia mention before that before the internal strife of the vampires began, the vampires known as the Knights of the Box all lived in a floating castle. After Letitia degenerated into a demon king, she held the most ferocious revenge game and annihilated all the traitors that started the internal strife. After that, the castle was reduced to a demonic realm that was solely occupied by Letitia, known as the last king of the vampires. It was feared by the people of the box. In other words, before Letitia was separated from the game, Letitia had been living in the floating vampire castle. Later on, when Letitia was separated from the game, that castle was sealed together with the game. Now, as the game restarted, that ancient vampire castle seemed to have been resummoned. In that case, is it very possible that Letitia is up there? Noah immediately came to a decision. Pest, let's go check out the castle. A castle. Pest looked to the floating castle and sighed. Understood. After he finished saying those words, Noah turned into a ray of light. As for Pest, she turned into a burst of black wind and began to fly toward the direction of the floating ancient castle. Rumble. The closer they got to the dark clouds, the more violent the lightning that flashed back and forth in the clouds. The deafening sound of thunder continuously reverberated in the surroundings, causing pain in the eardrums of those who heard it. Noah and Pest deliberately took a detour around the enormous dragon. First, they flew into the thick clouds at a distance away from the enormous dragon. Then, they made a turn and flew toward the ancient castle floating above the enormous dragon. Gradually, as Noah and Pest approached the ancient castle, it grew bigger and bigger. This proved that Noah and Pest were rapidly approaching the location of the ancient castle. If this were to continue, the two of them should be able to enter the vampire castle soon. That is, if nothing were to stop them. Noah, who was flying toward the direction of the castle, suddenly sensed something. His eyes narrowed and he came to a stop. Pest immediately stopped as well. She asked in confusion. What's wrong? Noah did not say anything. He merely looked in the direction of the ancient castle, leading Pest's gaze to follow him. Only at this moment did Pest notice something. Not far from the vampire's castle, a strange black dot had appeared. It was a completely pitch-black shadow that seemed to be able to absorb all light. Like a swamp, it was wriggling non-stop and changing its appearance. That's right. It was a shadow. Shrinking, changing, expanding. It was a shadow that was repeating these actions non-stop. It was like a malicious spirit that had crawled up from the dark abyss. Darkness and formless killing intent surged all over its body. Pest spoke in astonishment when she saw that shadow. What is that? Not long after, she obtained the answer to her question. Rumble. Thunder continued to rise and fall in the sky. With the rumbling thunder as the background, the pitch-black shadow took the form of a human. It quietly stood before the floating castle and entered Noah and Pest's line of sight. A coat that gave off the air of a ruler was fluttering in the wind. The dazzling lightning illuminated the long golden hair that was as bright as sunlight. Pest's face stiffened when she saw that figure. Noah muttered softly as he stared at the figure. Letitia. Chapter 1361. Letitia. Seeing the young girl floating before the vampire's ancient castle, Pest's face was filled with doubt, confusion and disbelief. Pest could not be blamed for acting this way. The reason for that was because, compared to the Letitia's appearance in Pest's memories, the current Letitia's appearance had completely changed. No. To be more exact, it would be more accurate to say that her appearance had changed. Not only was she no longer wearing the blue and white maid uniform, but even her age had changed enormously. If the Letitia Pest knew was a young girl of the same age as herself, then the Letitia before her was at least 17 or 18 years old. The adorable young girl's appearance had changed into a woman emitting a bewitching aura. Her beautiful waist-length golden hair no longer had that lovely ribbon around it. Instead, it flowed down her soft waist like a waterfall. Such a dramatic change made it impossible for one to associate it with the adorable Letitia. However, the waist-length golden hair, deep red eyes and stern expression all possessed Letitia's shadow. In other words, it was the feeling of Letitia suddenly becoming an adult. Half an hour ago, the maid who could be considered to be of the same age as Pest had now transformed into such a mature and bewitching appearance. It was no wonder Pest would react in such a manner. Only Noah knew that the mature and bewitching appearance was Letitia's true appearance. Her adorable and young appearance was merely another one of Letitia's appearances in order to accumulate power and avoid unnecessary consumption of power. Only when Letitia revealed this mature and bewitching appearance would she unleash her full strength in battle. In other words, the current Letitia was in a state where she was prepared to unleash her full strength at any moment. Something's wrong. Noah suddenly spoke. She's not Letitia. That's right. The person with Letitia's appearance was not Letitia herself. Shadow. That's Letitia's shadow. Dragon's shadow. That was the name of that shadow. The shadow called Dragon's Shadow was actually Letitia's grace. This grace was capable of a myriad of changes. Furthermore, it was very powerful. After the godhead was taken away, this gift became incomplete. Even so, with the help of the dragon's shadow, Letitia was still able to stand firmly at the bottom of the 5 digits. She was not reduced to a small fry at the bottom. When the dragon's shadow was in its complete state and she still possessed the divinity, Letitia even became a full-fledged ruler and was given a 4-digit position. One could imagine how powerful this gift was. Although they did not know what was going on, Letitia's dragon's shadow had appeared in Letitia's form. She stood in front of Noah and Pest. A pair of emotionless and cold crimson eyes stared at Noah and Pest. The gift known as Dragon's Shadow was in Letitia's form. She slowly raised a hand to the front. Whing! In the next moment, following an intense wave of energy fluctuations, a pitch-black shadow spread out from Letitia's body like a tide. Amidst the trembling sounds, the expanding shadows gradually turned into sharp weapons. There were sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and all sorts of other forms. They seemed to have emerged from the spatial fluctuations, and their sharp points were aimed at Noah and Pest. That scene was simply like a pitch-black gate of Babylon. Soon after, the sharp weapons formed by the shadows shot out explosively. They covered the sky and covered the earth as they shot toward Noah and Pest. Their speed was simply faster than a bullet. Pest's expression changed. Even Noah's eyes narrowed. Immediately after, the master and servant duo kicked the air at the same time and rapidly retreated backward. However, the rain of weapons easily caught up to the two of them. Seeing the sharp points of the pitch-black weapons gradually enlarging in his eyes, Noah did not hesitate in the slightest. On his arm, the magic patterns that represented enhanced magic spread out. His powerful fist heavily smashed forward. Clang! Following the sound of metal colliding with metal, one of the pitch-black weapons was sent flying by Noah's fist. Clang! 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 In the next second, amidst a series of crisp sounds, the attacking pitch-black weapons were smashed away by Noah's fist one after another. They scattered into black spots all over the sky and regrouped in the direction of Letitia's shadow. Only after all the weapons were sent flying did Noah stop and float in midair. Sensing that his arms had become slightly numb from the collision just now, even Noah couldn't help but be astonished. What great power! Regardless of whether it was power or speed, the weapons formed by the dragon's shadow were extremely astonishing. That power was definitely not at the bottom of the 5-digit level. In fact, it didn't even seem like the power of a 5-digit level. Pest clearly had the same feeling. She stared intently at Letitia's shadow in front of her and spoke somewhat nervously. Be careful. That shadow has the aura of a divinity. Those words caused Noah's heart to tremble. Divinity. Letitia's shadow has a divinity. Didn't that mean that at this very moment, Noah was facing the true power of Letitia when she was at her peak and was known as the Demon King? So that's how it is. Not only did Letitia release the sealed game, Letitia's original divinity was also prepared, allowing Letitia to recover to her peak strength. Noah's mood was mixed with joy and worry. He was happy because Letitia's divinity that had been stripped away appeared before him. He was worried because the timing of the divinity's return was simply too terrible. If that was truly the dragon's shadow that possessed Letitia's divinity, then it would mean that the enemy Noah and Pest were facing was a 4-digit level Demon King. A pure-blooded Demon King that had once commanded the entire vampire race that protected the order of the court. A pure-blooded Demon King that had once held the position of the ruler of the entire hierarchy and established the hierarchy system. A 4-digit level Demon King, a pure-blooded dragon, a vicious game that exists only for the sake of revenge. Noah couldn't help but smile bitterly. Is this your true power? Letitia. As if to verify Noah's thoughts, the pitch-black sharp blades that blotted out the sky and covered the earth once again converged and took form. Like a violent storm, the blades cut through space and enveloped Noah and Pest amidst sharp sonic booms. Buzz, however, at this moment, water-like golden ripples began to undulate around Noah. Within the ripples, blades, swords, spears, halberds and various other treasures that were undoubtedly much more gorgeous and dazzling compared to the pitch-black weapons emerged from the ripples. They turned into flashes of light and shot toward the incoming rain of pitch-black weapons. Clang, 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 clang. Immediately, in the dark cloud-filled sky, the gorgeous and dazzling treasures collided with the monotonous pitch-black treasures repeatedly. Sounds of metal colliding were heard and sparks filled the entire sky. Pest! Noah called out to Pest, who was beside him. Stay here and take care of Letitia's shadow. Huh? Pest was startled. You want me to take care of Letitia's shadow? There's nothing to be surprised about. Although that shadow possesses Letitia's divinity, it doesn't seem to possess any intelligence. It only knows how to launch simple attacks. With your 5-digit level divine power, it won't be hard for you to tangle with her, said Noah. I don't have time to waste here. Thus, I'll leave this place to you. Remember, you are not allowed to scatter Letitia's shadow. Otherwise, her divinity will likely disappear. After saying those words, Noah ignored the stupefied Pest and turned into a ray of light that flew toward the castle. Pest was unable to stop him in time. She could only look on helplessly as the pitch-black sharp blades shot toward her. As if giving up on herself, she raised a black wind. It's my misfortune to have a master like you. Chapter 1362. Whoosh! The cold wind was like a sharp blade, blowing through the castle in midair. It was a castle full of lonely air and thick dust. The castle was almost entirely made of stone. Even under the attack of the wind, the buildings inside were able to remain unshaken. Even the streets were not affected by the wind, almost maintaining their original appearance. In short, it was a majestic city. Unfortunately, there wasn't a single person in such a city, causing the air to be deathly still. If one walked along the main road from the direction of the city gate, then one would finally arrive at the imperial throne hall. In the imperial throne hall, there was a throne. At this time, a young girl was quietly sitting on the throne, as if she was taking a nap. The quiet atmosphere pervaded around her, making the scene seem unusually beautiful. The one sitting on the throne was naturally Letitia. The clothes on her body were different from the maid clothes she wore when she was forcibly taken away. She had changed into a black dress. Her hands and feet were chained to the throne. She was treated like a prisoner, but unexpectedly, there was a strange sense of beauty. His shiny golden hair reflected a resplendent luster, causing one's heart to surge with emotion. This extraordinarily cute-looking girl, at this moment, let her consciousness wander in a hazy state, as if she was floating in the sea of dreams, drifting with the waves. If there were no external factors interfering, the girl would probably continue to sleep, right? Until a call sounded. Letitia. 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 For Letitia, that was a very familiar voice. If one had to say why, it would be because the other person's identity, to Letitia, was very special. Although she was once reduced to an object because of the Demon King's attack, it must be said here that the girl named Letitia was not only a full-power ruler, but also the legitimate heir to the throne of the vampire clan. Her identity was extremely noble, and it would not be an exaggeration to say that she was the princess of the Box Court. Even after falling to the Demon King, Letitia was still known by the people of the Box Court as the Vampire King, Dracula, and other famous titles. It could be said that she was very famous. This kind of Letitia had never bowed her head in front of anyone before. The only exception was the unfathomable man who had recently broken into Letitia's life and saved her, who had been reduced to an object. For this man, Letitia was only grateful at first, and called him master because of their relationship. As the other party's unfathomable side became more and more obvious, Letitia's pure gratitude gradually transitioned into true admiration, respect, and even reverence. She began to unconsciously recognize the identity of master. Therefore, it must be explained here. Since ancient times, there was only one person who could make Letitia call him master. Thus, to Letitia, how could the other person's voice not special, and not familiar? At that moment, Letitia desperately whipped her hazy consciousness and woke up from her slumber. As soon as she opened her eyes, Letitia. Letitia, 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 and they, Letitia, 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 Letitia. Letitia, master. Letitia used her remaining hazy consciousness to observe her surroundings. It wasn't until she realized where she was that she shuddered and recalled everything that had happened. So that's how it is. Letitia said softly with a complicated expression. Have I become the Demon King again? Although it was not voluntary, for Letitia, this fact was still a shock. After all, the reason why Letitia became the Demon King was not honorable at all. She became the Demon King for revenge. She held such a vicious game for revenge. All of this was a past that Letitia could not bear to look back on. After becoming the host of the game again, Letitia understood the current situation in an instant. Because of the lack of rationality and Letitia's reluctance to hold the game again, the dragon did not take action and was still observing. Letitia's shadow seemed to have noticed an intruder, and while Letitia was asleep, it automatically attacked the enemy. As for the fact that the divinity that Letitia originally possessed was taken by the shadow, Letitia was more or less surprised. Due to the return of the divinity, Letitia's dragon's shadow was restored, and her power also returned to its peak. If it were any other time, this would definitely be something to be happy about. However, now, the return of the divinity only increased the difficulty of Letitia's game for others. This was not a good thing for Letitia. How do you feel? Noah just looked at Letitia, who had a complicated expression, and asked softly. Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? If I can feel uncomfortable, then maybe it's a good thing. Letitia laughed bitterly. Master should have noticed it too, right? The current me is not the real me. Looking closely, Letitia's figure did seem a little illusory. This was because the body on the throne was just a shadow with Letitia's consciousness. Noah looked straight at Letitia's bitter expression and sighed. This is just a projection of your consciousness. Your real body should have turned into that dragon by now, right? Master really noticed it. Letitia's expression became even more bitter. Yes, the dragon outside is my original body. No, it should be said that I used the Ophiuchus's sun's sovereign and my own body as a medium to summon the dragon. In other words, the pure-blooded dragon outside was transformed into Letitia using the Ophiuchus's sun's sovereign as a medium. A long time ago, in order to suppress the vampires who caused internal strife, I used the Ophiuchus's sun's sovereign and my own body as a medium to transform into the dragon. I launched an extremely vicious game of bestowment and took revenge on my own kind. Letitia shook her head. Only by transforming into the strongest species of the box court did I have the ability to fight against almost half of the vampires by myself. I even wandered in the box court for an extremely long time, wreaking havoc as the Demon King until today. That's already in the past, right? Noah couldn't help but interject. Now, you don't want to endanger the box court as the Demon King anymore, right? So, the so-called involuntary is probably referring to my current state, right? Letitia met Noah's gaze. Now, I only hope that Master can clear this cruel game and give me relief. Hearing this, Noah was silent. Looking at Letitia's resolute and awe-inspiring face, Noah spoke word by word. But, clearing the game means that you must die, right? Letitia's breath stopped and she couldn't say anything. And this undoubtedly confirmed Noah's words. Letitia's game had 4 victory conditions. If the contestant wanted to clear the game, they must achieve one of the 4 victory conditions. Contestant victory condition 1, kill the game leader, Demon King Dracula. Contestant victory condition 2, kill the game leader, Letitia D. Cray. Contestant victory condition 3, collect the shattered starry sky and offer the beast belt to the throne. Contestant victory condition 4, follow the guidance of the beast belt to return to the throne in the correct way and shoot through the chained revolutionary leader's heart. The first and second victory conditions were to kill Letitia. And from Letitia's chained body on the throne, it could be seen that the chained revolutionary leader, in the 4th victory condition, was also referring to her. As for the 3rd victory condition, Noah estimated that if it was achieved, it would also cause Letitia to lose her life. Only by completely blocking her escape route, Letitia's impossible punishment clause in the game could be established. So, no matter which victory condition was achieved, in the end, Letitia had to die. Chapter 1363. Death. As long as they cleared the game called Sun Synchronous Orbit in Vampire King, Letitia would die. Although it was cruel, this was the reality. Of course, death was not a particularly serious consequence for Noah or Letitia. The reason why the former had this understanding was because even if Letitia died, he could use the precious resurrection item from the previous world to resurrect Letitia. Although Letitia's level could reach up to 4 digits, low-level resurrection items were not effective on her. Noah's treasure house did not only have low-level resurrection items, there were also some high-level resurrection items. What's more, Noah still had some of the most precious high-level resurrection items. Using such a resurrection item, he could resurrect a designated person unconditionally without any restrictions. Even if the body, spirit, and even soul were annihilated, using the high-level resurrection item, he could still resurrect. If there must be a limit, it was that this high-level resurrection item, under normal circumstances, was not only the most precious one-time consumable item, but it could only resurrect a person unconditionally. However, if Letitia really died, then no matter what, Noah would not be stingy with such a high-level resurrection item. As for Letitia, she didn't take death seriously at all. If death could free her from the position of the Demon King, then Letitia did not mind abandoning her life that had lived for countless years. And Noah also saw this point. Noah stared straight at Letitia's pair of exceptionally beautiful crimson eyes as he spoke in an extremely serious tone. "I won't allow you to underestimate your life." Letitia was stunned. "Listen carefully." Noah stared straight at Letitia's stunned face as he enunciated each and every word clearly. "I am your master, and you have personally admitted that you are my possession. In that case, without my permission, you are absolutely not allowed to throw away this life that belongs to me." These unquestionable words made Letitia's heart uncontrollably shake. "Do you know?" Noah said in a voice that contained strong emotions. "The thing I hate the most is people who underestimate life." After saying that, Noah stood up and turned around. With his back facing Letitia, he slowly walked in the direction of the door. Looking at Noah's gradually disappearing back, Letitia could not help but speak. "You? Where are you going?" "Of course I'm going to your place." Noah's voice slowly echoed. "Whether you are a vampire or a dragon, this time, let me tell you what kind of punishment you will receive if you ignore your master's thoughts." After leaving this sentence, Noah's figure disappeared from Letitia's sight. Letitia could only stare blankly in the direction where Noah had left. In her heart, the idea of ending things with death began to gradually change. If it's master, maybe there is a way. Bang. In the distant horizon, in front of the vampire's ancient castle, the pitch-black wave collided with the pitch-black storm. It was as if neither side was willing to give up on the other. It was also as if they were two monstrous waves that gave rise to a sky-shaking loud noise and a berserk impact. The surrounding pitch-black clouds were all dispersed. The shadow that carried Letitia's godhead floated in midair as if it was looking down on everything. Pitch-black shadows unceasingly surged out from its body, forming surging black waves. Amidst the rumbling sounds, the black waves covered the sky and covered the earth as they surged forward. Opposite the shadow, Pest's blue and white maid uniform had unknowingly changed into the black and white patterned dress. She was also wearing a pair of snow boots. Her body was also surging with a pitch-black substance. It was a black wind that could bring about life and death. With a whistling sound, she also charged forward. Boom! The black waves and the black wind collided once again in the distant horizon. In an instant, the loud noise caused by the collision even covered the continuous rumbling of thunder in the surroundings. It gave rise to astonishing shock waves. Traces of pitch-black luster mixed with it spread out in all directions. The queen of the vampire controlling the pitch-black shadow. The god of the Black Death controlling the pitch-black wind and waves. The two young ladies, who stood at the top of their species in every sense of the word, constantly turned their powers into physical collisions, causing deafening explosions to resound in the dark sky, causing the atmosphere to become chaotic. At first glance, it appeared that Letitia and Pest were evenly matched. In reality, in terms of strength, Letitia was superior to Pest. The race known as the vampire was actually a race that was born from pure-blooded dragons. Pure-blooded dragons were life forms that were born from the sudden gathering of pure energy. If a pure-blooded dragon like that were to undergo parthenogenesis, the new life form that was born would also be a pure-blooded dragon. However, if a pure-blooded dragon were to mate with a mutant, it would give birth to a subspecies of dragon. Thus, according to speculation, it was very possible that the vampires were the descendants of a pure-blooded dragon after a pure-blooded dragon mated with a mutant. After a long period of time, the vampires evolved into the pure-blooded dragon race. This was something that could be seen from the fact that Letitia was known as the Demon King Dracula. After all, Dracula was a very famous vampire. However, according to the historical records, Dracula was a male. He was not related to Letitia at all. Thus, the reason why Letitia was known as Dracula was because Dracula was known as Draculia. In other words, Dracula was the son of the dragon. Because of this, Letitia was known as the Demon King Dracula after she became the Demon King. As for the grace of the dragon's shadow, it was the shadow of the dragon that the vampires believed in. From this, one could imagine exactly how high the grade of the grace of a pure-blooded dragon was. Only by possessing this grace of the dragon's shadow and the power of her divine spark was Letitia able to reach 4 digits. In terms of pure strength, even though Pest was a deity and was at the peak of 5 digits, she was still no match for Letitia. Unfortunately, it is really as that guy said. You only know how to use simple attacks. You are simply unable to unleash the true power of 4 digits. Pest turned the wind of death into a rapidly spinning pitch-black tornado. Like a drill, the tornado shot toward Letitia. If this is the case, it would be one thing if you were in existence at the peak of 5 digits. However, as a deity at the peak of 5 digits, I am still able to fight against you. Like a berserk tornado, the wind of death streaked across the sky and shot straight toward Letitia. Facing this attack, Letitia's expression remained unchanged. She raised her hand, and the surrounding shadows started to tremble. They started to frantically spin in the air. Not long afterward, they turned into a pitch-black tornado. Like a black python that could devour heaven and earth, the tornado twisted and faced the incoming wind of death. Rumble. The pitch-black tornado collided with the wind and waves. Like a meteorite colliding with Earth, it gave rise to a rumble much louder than any of the previous collisions. The berserk shockwaves spread in all directions and dispersed the surrounding black clouds. If this were to continue, the battle would likely continue to be in a stalemate. It was mainly because of Noah's instructions that Pest did not attack Letitia to death. Otherwise, with the overly simple movement pattern of the dragon's shadow, Pest would still be able to find an opportunity to kill Letitia. At the moment when Letitia and Pest were locked in a stalemate, a ray of light flew out from the vampire's ancient castle. Sensing that ray of light, Pest's movements turned sluggish for a moment. This sluggishness caused the attention of Letitia's shadow to be completely captured by the ray of light flying out from the ancient castle. Buzz! Immediately, the black shadows that filled the sky turned into sharp weapons and shot toward the ray of light. Chapter 1364. Whoosh! The pitch-black martial tools formed from pure shadow streaked through the air. Amidst sharp sonic booms, they shot toward the ray of light flying out from the vampire's ancient castle. Seeing this scene, Pest's heart tightened. She subconsciously cried out, "That's right. Be careful." At practically the instant this voice sounded, the ray of light flying out from the vampire's ancient castle stopped. Then, it spoke in a slightly furious voice. "Stop right there." Those words actually turned into tangible ripples. Carrying extremely dense power, they slowly reverberated through the air like ripples on the surface of a lake. The ripple-like power swept through the air. It also swept through the pitch-black martial tools formed from pure shadows that were shooting toward the ray of light from every direction. Right at this moment, it was as if the entire space had frozen. The pitch-black martial tools that were shooting out like bullets suddenly stopped in midair. Soon after, the voice that carried a little anger sounded once again. "Return." As if they were soldiers that had received an order, the pitch-black martial tools exploded and returned to their shadows. Like streams of liquid, they flew back through the air and returned to the location of Letitia's shadow, entering her body. Such an inconceivable scene caused Pest's eyes to widen. Not to mention Pest, even Letitia, who was formed from the dragon's shadow, seemed to have crashed. Her entire body froze in place. Buzz! In the next second, several profound runes suddenly appeared around Letitia's shadow. They blossomed with dazzling radiance. The radiance turned into a pitch-black sphere that completely enveloped Letitia's shadow. Then, the sphere began to shrink. Not long after, it shrunk to the size of a palm. Then, it flew toward a certain direction and landed on a hand. Immediately afterward, the palm-sized pitch-black sphere was tossed toward Pest. Pest subconsciously caught it in her hand. "I'll leave it to you for safekeeping. Don't lose it." After leaving this sentence, Lu Guang once again flew out and shot in the direction of the giant dragon. Seeing the ray of light that was getting farther and farther away in her field of vision, then looking at the pitch-black sphere in her hand, Pest lowered her head in dejection. She wanted to cry but had no tears. Why did I work so hard? On the other side, Noah, who had turned into a ray of light, looked at the dragon head that was extending its head from the split sky. Intense radiance flickered in his eyes. Roar! 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 As if sensing some sort of threat, the dragon finally stopped roaring at the capital of raging flames below. It abruptly turned its head and let out an extremely resounding roar toward Noah's direction. This roar made the entire world seem to tremble at this moment, trembling slightly. Whoosh! Following a terrifying whistling sound, the dragon's tail. That tail was so enormous that one couldn't see the end of it. It carried a terrifying power. And ferociously swept toward Noah's direction. This was the first time the dragon had finally launched an attack. As for this attack, it was as if the entire sky had collapsed. The inconceivably enormous dragon's tail pressed down heavily. Wherever it passed, the air beneath the dragon's tail would explode. It was so terrifying. Noah narrowed his eyes and stopped his flying figure. Bang! Resplendent and berserk golden waves of air suddenly surged out from his body and pervaded the entire world. The giant that blots out the sky is supporting the world with his hand. I will allow this divine power to flow into my body. From now on, I will display the ultimate power that no one can match. In Noah's heart, the outline of the stone plate with 10 patterns connected to it suddenly turned and pointed toward the giant. At this instant, a huge golden silhouette rose from Noah's body. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a phantom-like giant. Facing the dragon's tail that was terrifyingly powerful, it raised its hand that was as large as a mountain. Boom! When the gigantic dragon tail that blotted out the sky landed heavily on the palms of the giant that also blotted out the sky, a terrifying impact sound and violent wind immediately erupted. It shook the entire space until it was distorted, and the lightning and thunder in the dense clouds were shaken to the point that they completely dissipated. In the terrifying impact and loud sound, the phantom-like golden giant was shaken and fell down. The huge dragon's tail was shaken back and stopped its attack. Just by relying on that attack, the giant dragon definitely had the ability to easily defeat reverse 16 knights and His Highness, whose physical strength was so strong that it was against the rules. If it had been the 16 knights and His Highness who had taken that blow, they would have been injured long ago, right? However, the power that the incarnation of the giant possessed was said to be able to support the sky. This statement might be exaggerated, but even if it was exaggerated, one could still see the terrifying divine power that the incarnation of the giant could display from this description. Therefore, when the attack of the giant dragon was blocked and the huge dragon's tail was shaken back, the phantom-like giant suddenly turned into a golden light. It swept in front of the dragon's tail like lightning, and fiercely punched out with an unbelievably huge fist. Bang 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 bang. This punch caused a terrifying explosion to form under the fist. Carrying such an astonishing power, the phantom giant's fist fiercely hit the dragon's tail. Boom! Accompanied by a sky-shaking impact sound, the phantom giant's fist mercilessly shattered the dragon's scales on the dragon's tail, causing blood to splatter out. Ao 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 ao. The roar of the giant dragon suddenly turned into a painful howl. Obviously, this attack still caused some damage to the giant dragon. And this attack also thoroughly aroused the ferocity of the giant dragon. Whoo! It was still that terrifying whistling sound. Under the momentum of the explosion, some of the scales on the dragon's huge tail were shattered, and it heavily slammed into the giant's phantom. Boom! In the muffled explosion, the astonishing impact exploded in front of the phantom giant's chest, causing the phantom giant to be heavily hit. It was like a rubber ball that was slapped away, and under the terrifying force, it was violently pushed back. In the phantom giant, Noah's throat inevitably squeezed out a muffled groan, but he resisted the terrible impact, and tried his best to control the phantom giant's body. Therefore, before the phantom giant was violently pushed back, it suddenly stretched out its hands and hugged the dragon's tail. Giant that blots out the sky, show your unparalleled divine power, and destroy the creatures that are your enemies. The new spirit of the language turned the surging golden divine power into a substantial power, and poured into the phantom giant's body. At this moment, the phantom giant's body seemed to have solidified a lot. It squeezed out all the power in its body, and tried its best to hold the giant dragon's tail tightly. The strength caused the phantom giant's hands to sink into the flesh of the dragon's tail, and the dragon's tail was forcefully squeezed, causing the surrounding scales to shatter again. Ao, 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 ao. The giant dragon let out a painful howl. Hiya hiya. Noah let out a roar. The giant phantom exerted its strength, twisted its body, and pulled the giant dragon out of the split sky. Then, it threw the giant dragon down heavily. Instantly, the giant dragon turned into an unprecedentedly huge meteorite, and fell from the sky. It went against the strong wind, and it rubbed against the air, and smashed into a mountain not far away from Huangyan City. Boom! For a period of time, the earth trembled, the mountain swayed, and the gigantic body of the giant dragon fell with a bang, causing the earth to tremble violently at that moment. It was as if an earthquake of the highest magnitude had occurred, causing cracks that were as thick as abysses to continuously spread out from the spot where it landed. Chapter 1365. Rumble. The earth continued to shake. Kacha kacha kacha. Cracks that were as deep as the abyss began to spread between the mountains. Ao, 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 ao. The giant dragon that was pulled down from the sky and smashed heavily onto the ground, causing the earth to tremble and mountains to shake. It let out a roar that seemed to be both painful and furious, and struggled to get up. However, at this moment, golden ripples began to appear from the space around the giant dragon. In the blink of an eye, the ripples were densely packed around the giant dragon. Within the ripples, silver chains that were not even as thin as a strand of hair, but had golden light flowing through them, flew out and coiled around the giant dragon. In the end, the giant dragon's huge body restricted its movements. Before it could struggle to get up, the silver chains that were flowing with golden light wrapped around the giant dragon's body layer by layer, binding the giant dragon. However, this level of binding was nothing to the giant dragon, right? After all, even if it wrapped around the giant dragon's body, the chains were only as thin as a strand of hair. They were not enough to bind the giant dragon. As long as the giant dragon gently moved its body, the chains that were wrapped around its body would break apart. There was no suspense. That was to be expected. The Enkidu, a noble artifact, was a natural enemy to those who possessed divinity. On the contrary, for an existence that did not have divinity, the Enkidu relic was only a slightly harder chain. The giant dragon was a pure-blooded dragon species. It was summoned using Letitia's body and the Ophiuchus constellation's sun as a medium. Regardless of its nature, it did not have divinity in it. Therefore, the Heavenlock, Enkidu, was really just a restriction on the level of a thread wrapped around a dragon's body. It could be completely broken free in an instant. If Noah hadn't interfered, then, it was unknown when Noah had cancelled the giant dragon's relic. He flew down from the sky and landed on the giant dragon's body. He grabbed one of the Enkidu relic's chains. Pang! The divine power that surged around Noah's body turned into crimson waves of air. It was as if a crimson dragon that was only 2 meters tall and had green jade-like gems overlapped on Noah's body, setting off a gust of air. It was the Dragon Emperor's incarnation. Boost, 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 boost. The green gems on the crimson dragon phantom that overlapped with Noah's body flickered and spoke in a steady voice. Transfer. At a certain moment, the voice on the jade changed. The power that had multiplied countless times passed through Noah's hand that was holding onto the Enkidu relic. It was like a surging source of power that was being poured into the Enkidu relic. Wang. The flowing light on the Enkidu relic suddenly increased, causing a resplendent golden light to illuminate the entire world. It also illuminated every space in the surroundings. It was only during this period of time that the Enkidu's heavenly lock, which could only exert an extraordinary binding power on targets with divinity, had its hardness increased to an unimaginable level under the effect of the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear. Only at this moment did the giant dragon seem to have reacted. It began to struggle frantically. Roar, 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 roar. Violent roars accompanied the giant dragon's struggle, constantly reverberating in the air. However, at this moment, it was already too late to struggle. After being multiplied by the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear countless times, the Enkidu relic's hardness had reached a level where it could restrain the giant dragon. Thus, no matter how the giant dragon struggled, the chains that were not even as thick as a single strand of hair to the giant dragon were like maggots in a tarsal bone. They firmly bound the giant dragon's body, firmly trapping it. Roar, 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 roar. The valiant binding power caused the giant dragon, who was unable to break free, to let out a frantic roar. It began to struggle even more desperately. Under such a chaotic struggle, the earth shook continuously, causing ghastly fissures to rapidly expand. If the giant dragon was allowed to struggle wildly like this, then this piece of land would definitely become a barren land. Noah, who was holding on to the Enkidu relic, tried his best to stabilize his body under the giant dragon's struggle. A fierce light appeared in his eyes as he clenched his free hand into a fist and raised it high. Pang! The fist that carried a huge force directly bombarded the giant dragon's body, solidly landing on the giant dragon's huge body. Roar, 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 roar. The giant dragon's painful roar resounded. Although it did not have the terrifying strength of the giant transformation, the Dragon Emperor transformation still had the dragon kill ability to cause great damage to dragon-type creatures. As a pure-blooded dragon species, the giant dragon seemed to have been seriously injured by the dragon kill ability of the Dragon Emperor transformation. Even if there were no external injuries, the internal injuries caused by this attack should have accumulated. Clearly aware of this, Noah had just raised his fist and was about to strike a second time when he suddenly remembered that the giant dragon was actually Letitia. He then dispelled the thought of continuing to attack. Then, Noah pulled out the small silver sword from his waist. In Noah's body, the energy source that was originally filled with divine power suddenly changed. Half of it turned into divine power and was imbued into the small silver sword in Noah's hand. Clang! The highest grade elven magic device named Demon Slayer bloomed in a brilliant white light and was tightly held in Noah's hand. Closing his eyes, Noah confirmed with his contracted elf in his mind. Aster, can you break the connection between Letitia and the giant dragon? The giant dragon was summoned by Letitia using herself as a medium and the sun sovereign of the Ophiuchus constellation. Since Letitia herself was used as a medium, there must be some kind of contractual power that connected Letitia and the giant dragon. If this was the case, then with Aster's resistance to curses that could even break contracts, he should be able to break this connection. At that time, the giant dragon's summoning would be ineffective and Letitia would be released. Aster's voice, who understood what Noah wanted to do, sounded in his mind. Although I can break it, Letitia, in addition to using herself as a medium, also used the power of the Sun Sovereign to summon a pure-blooded dragon. With my power, it might not be enough. No problem, this is also within my expectations. Noah tightly held the holy sword that was flickering with a brilliant white light. As long as it can be broken, if the power is not enough, let me multiply it. After saying this, the other half of the divine power in Noah's energy source surged. Boost, 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 boost. The violent power poured into the silver holy sword. Transfer. The silver holy sword blossomed with a brilliant white light that illuminated the heaven and earth. Puchi. The silver holy sword that carried that astonishing white light pierced straight down and pierced through the giant dragon's body. Chapter 1366. The sky gradually brightened up. The thick layer of dark clouds that filled the entire sky slowly dissipated at some point, allowing the clear sky to return to this world. The sunlight illuminated the ruined flame capital, making it seem as though it was shrouded in a layer of golden gauze. It was exceptionally dazzling. That scene made people think of the dawn after the storm and couldn't help but feel that there was still hope in the world. Taking a closer look, in the distant sky, Vampire's ancient castle was still floating there without the slightest movement. As for the inside of Raging Flame Capital, the bodies of the giants were everywhere, and the ground was dyed with blood. Pterosaurs, fire dragons in human form, and fire lizards in lizard form were cleaning up the mess in every corner of Blazing Flame Capital. They were also carrying the injured people away on stretchers. They looked very busy. His Highness, who was overlooking the scene in Flame Capital from a cliff, was covered in bandages. Even half of his face was bandaged. After a while, he gradually closed his golden eyes. Looks like that guy really defeated the strongest kind of giant dragon. It had only been 3 hours since the dragon had disappeared into the sky. Before that, the severely injured His Highness was rescued by Belle from Noah's hands. Belle used the greatest healing power to heal him, but this was the extent of his recovery. One could imagine how terrifying Noah's fist was when he was in a rage. Especially after using the Dragon Emperor's incarnation, the punch directly hit His Highness into a seriously injured state. If Belle didn't rescue His Highness from Noah's hands in time, perhaps Noah only needed to add another punch to kill His Highness. His Highness felt a little ironic. I thought that even if my strength wasn't as good as his, I wouldn't lose with my trump card even if I couldn't win. I didn't expect that I wouldn't even have the chance to use my trump card. Or rather, it was because Noah considered that His Highness might still have a trump card that could be comparable to authority, that he used the Phoenix incarnation at the first moment in a state of rage. His purpose was to completely defeat His Highness before His Highness could use his trump card at a speed that was incomprehensible to human intelligence. In fact, His Highness didn't even have the power to resist due to the speed of authority. He was severely injured by Noah in 2 to 3 moves. In the end, His Highness didn't even have the chance to use his trump card and was defeated. Since I was born, this is the first time I lost so badly, right? His Highness looked in the direction of Glorious Flame City as if he could see the man who had the same background but had a different fate. He muttered to himself. However, this miserable situation won't last forever, I promise. As soon as his voice fell, a spatial fluctuation began to spread behind His Highness. In the spatial fluctuation, several figures slowly appeared. There were a total of 3 people who appeared. One was a phantom beast with a pitch-black fur and a single horn. His upper body was that of a vulture and his lower body was that of a lion. His race was known as the Griffin. One was a witch wearing a strange robe that only exposed the lower half of her face, holding a harp in her hand. The other was a man wearing a gorgeous coat with a contrast of red and blue, dressed like a clown. The 3 figures appeared behind His Highness. Looking at His Highness who was wrapped in bandages, they had different reactions. The pitch-black griffin was surprised. The witch in the robe was shocked. The clown-like man raised his eyebrows. The 3's reactions completely expressed their impressions of His Highness. The first one doubted the reality of the scene in front of him. The second one felt that it was inconceivable. As for the third one, he was simply gloating. His Highness didn't seem to notice the three's reactions, or perhaps it should be said that he guessed their reactions. He didn't even turn his head and leisurely greeted them. Gerald, Aurora, Maxwell, are you guys back? These three names corresponded to the Griffin, the Witch, and the Clown. Your Highness. The Witch, called Aurora by His Highness, said hesitantly. Your injury, don't mind it. His Highness waved his hand that wasn't wrapped in bandages. I just met an unexpected, interesting, and powerful opponent. Opponent? The Griffin, called Elder Gu by His Highness, spat out a powerful voice. Is there anyone here who can be considered an opponent by His Highness? Perhaps the other party doesn't even consider me as an opponent. His Highness sighed, smiled bitterly, and said this with a little indifference. Then, he returned to his casual appearance and turned his head. Since you're here, it means that the results of the attacks in the east and south are out, right? His words made Elder Gu and Aurora's faces stiffen. They were speechless. Seeing this scene, His Highness understood. I see, the attacks failed. This time, the people in charge of attacking the east, south, and north areas were all people here. Among them, His Highness and Belle were in charge of attacking the north area. Elder Gu and Aurora were in charge of attacking the south area. The man called Maxwell was in charge of attacking the east area. Of course, other than the people here, each group had a few other demon kings as the vanguard. From the looks of it, all the demon kings in the vanguard had been dealt with. It's fine if it's the south area. After all, that's that guy's community. No Name, who doesn't have a flag or a name, went as well. There are a few talents there, so it's not surprising that they were repelled. His Highness turned his gaze to Maxwell. However, the east area has an army of avatars from the final trial attacking it, but they still failed. Isn't that a little unreasonable? Hearing this, Maxwell was different from the other two. He had no respect for His Highness at all and said this casually. That can't be helped, Your Highness. That White Knight King returned the divine spark to Buddhism and completely released the power of the seal. The first generation of the three-headed dragon's avatars was almost annihilated in an instant. The remaining ones are just small fries. It's only a matter of time before they are destroyed, right? What? Elder Gu and Aurora's expressions changed drastically. The White Knight King returned the divine spark to Buddhism. I see, has the White Knight King returned? His Highness's expression also changed slightly, and then he snorted lightly. If that's the case, then there's really no other way. At this moment, Ling's figure flashed out beside His Highness and appeared in front of everyone. Your Highness. Ling directly looked at His Highness and spoke with a heavy expression. The giant dragon has indeed been defeated. The reason why Ling wasn't by His Highness' side was to go to the capital of Raging Flames to gather information. As soon as she returned, Ling brought back such news that His Highness had expected. They really defeated the strongest species. His Highness closed his eyes. Then, what happened to the seal? His Highness's words made the atmosphere of the entire space extremely heavy. Under such circumstances, Ling spoke with a gloomy expression. Although it's just a preliminary guess, I think that the seal hasn't been broken yet, but it should have woken up. This sentence made the heavy atmosphere even thicker. Is that so? His Highness murmured. Has it finally woken up? Now, what should we do? The indecent smile on Maxwell's face also slowly disappeared, but his attitude was still extremely frivolous and casual compared to the others. According to the original plan, we must eliminate all the class rulers and their substitutes, then find a way to become the class ruler with full power and obtain the sovereignty of the sun. Now, the plan has undoubtedly failed, so we must enter the next stage, right? One of the mediums to seal it is the sovereignty of the sun. His Highness opened his eyes, and there was an indescribable expression in his eyes. So, our next plan has been decided. His Highness looked around at everyone. Remove the seal of the oldest demon king. Chapter 1367. Box 54545 Outer Sect, Blazing Flame City. In her sleep, Letitia's consciousness gradually began to awaken. The moment she woke up, Letitia clearly felt it. She felt a sense of fullness. It was as if something that she had lost was found. It was a sense of fullness that filled her entire body. This sense of fullness was something that Letitia had not felt for a very long time. Ever since she lost her divinity, even the dragon's shadow had become incomplete. Letitia could only feel a sense of emptiness, as if she had lost something. It had been a long time since she had felt such a sense of fullness. Accompanying this sense of fullness was a sense of power surging through Letitia's body. Sensing this sense of power and fullness, Letitia immediately understood. The divine spark that she had completely lost had returned. No, it was not only the divine spark. Even the gift of the dragon's shadow had been completed. There was no longer anything missing. In other words, at this very moment, Letitia had finally obtained back the 4-digit amount of power that she had lost. The one who had once become the ruler of the entire hierarchy, the one who led the entire vampire race, the one who protected the order of the Box Court, the one who was still known as Dracula even after his fall, had finally returned at this moment. Right now, Letitia had absolute confidence. As long as she relied on this power that she had regained from her peak, then even if she had to reverse the 16 knights in no name, Letitia would still have the qualifications to fight and even obtain victory. But why would the divine spark return? Why would the originally incomplete gift be completed? Letitia's hazy consciousness caused such a question to appear in her mind. However, as Letitia's consciousness gradually awakened, she gradually obtained an answer to this question. Recalling everything that happened before she lost consciousness, Letitia immediately shivered. Her consciousness instantly sobered up and her eyes abruptly opened. When she opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was an unfamiliar room. Immediately afterward, a familiar voice entered Letitia's ears. "You've finally woken up." Hearing this voice, Letitia subconsciously turned her head and looked to the side. Beside the bed that Letitia was lying on was Pest, who was wearing a blue and white maid outfit. She was looking at Letitia with a listless expression. "You slept a little too long, purebred Miss Vampire Princess." Pest. Letitia couldn't help but hold her head. What's wrong with me? What's wrong? Did you forget?" Pest explained with a bored expression on her face. "Have you forgotten that you've become a demon king again?" "No, I still remember this matter very clearly. Furthermore, I also remember that Master found the shadow of my consciousness in the vampire's castle." Letitia tried her best to recall this matter. "Then, I had a little chat with Master. After that, Master left. Not long after, my consciousness was suddenly cut off." "Of course it will be interrupted," Pest said in an annoyed manner. "That's because that guy cut off the connection between you and the dragon. Furthermore, he separated you from the dragon's body. Thus, your consciousness and the illusion immediately dissipated. After that, you fainted. Master separated me from the dragon's body." Letitia looked at Pest with an astonished expression. Then what about my game? Is there even a need to ask?" Pest said matter-of-factly. "Of course it was solved. That day, Noah used his Dragon Emperor Incarnation's multiplier ability to increase the power of the Demon Slayer to its limits. Then, he used the Demon Slayer to pierce through the dragon's body. After being pierced through by the Demon Slayer that had multiplied its power countless times, using Letitia's body as a medium and borrowing the power of the son of Ophiuchus constellation to summon the dragon, the connection between the dragon and the medium was directly severed. Amidst world-shaking roars, the dragon gradually disappeared. After that, Letitia, who was wearing a pitch-black dress, slowly appeared at the location where the dragon disappeared. She had fallen into an unconscious state. After that, Letitia's game was broken. After all, the dragon was a pure-blooded dragon species that was summoned using Letitia's body as a medium and borrowing the power of the son of Ophiuchus constellation. The disappearance of Letitia's dragon was also seen as the death of Letitia, the leader of the game. As a result, the game was broken, and Letitia was released from her position as the Demon Queen. Is that so? Letitia couldn't help but hold on to her chest as she muttered, "Is that so?" No wonder I could feel the affiliation contract in my body getting stronger from the start. The defeated Demon King would become the subordinate of the victor. This was one of the laws of the box. In the past, in the game of bestowment with Luos, Noah openly obtained Letitia's authority and established a subordinate contract with her. And now, after the experience of defeating the Demon King, the contract between Noah and Letitia became even stronger. With the two added together, it was likely that the strength of the contract in Letitia's body had reached a terrifying level. Originally, after establishing a subordinate contract, if the controlled party's strength was stronger than the controlled party would be able to resist the controlling party to a certain extent and weaken the controlling party's strength. Now, even if Letitia became stronger than Noah, she wouldn't be able to resist Noah's command, right? With this, I have truly become his possession. Sensing the extremely strong contract in her body, Letitia couldn't help but reveal a very beautiful smile. My master is truly an extraordinary individual. Seeing Letitia sighing in admiration, Pest narrowed her eyes. Why do I feel like you've become even happier? Oh. Letitia turned around and looked at Pest again. Could it be that you, who have become master subordinate, are extremely unhappy about this? Isn't that only natural? Pest spoke without the slightest hesitation. Who would be happy to become the subordinate of someone like that? Pest was different from Letitia, who was saved by Noah. Before becoming Noah's subordinate, Pest's impression of Noah was extremely bad. Later on, Noah defeated Pest with overwhelming power and turned her into his subordinate. Then, he ruthlessly taught the disagreeable Pest a lesson, causing her to lose her temper. Under such circumstances, how could Pest possibly feel happy about becoming Noah's subordinate? Because of that, Pest straightforwardly expressed her thoughts. Unfortunately, Pest had forgotten about it. Before this, the one who had taught the disagreeable Pest a lesson was Letitia. So that's how it is. You still haven't properly nurtured your loyalty to Master. Letitia narrowed her eyes and smiled sweetly at Pest. It just so happens that my divinity and grace have been completed. Now, even without Master's assistance, I should be able to properly educate the disobedient juniors. Allow me to tell you what kind of respect a maid should have toward her master. The expression on Pest's face froze completely. She had to make things clear here. In the beginning, she had only served Noah as a maid with gratitude. However, as her gratitude gradually turned into respect, Letitia grew more and more fond of her identity as a maid and serving Noah. As Noah's first maid, Letitia could not bear to see a junior being disrespectful to her master. Let alone now, Letitia had completely treated Noah as her master. There was not the slightest bit of falsehood in her attitude. On top of that, the intense emotions she felt from being saved by Noah again made the vampire queen impatient to render meritorious service. There's no time to lose. Before Master returns, you must at least correct your disrespectful attitude, Letitia muttered. Considering the issue of time, should I use the method of educating a slave? At this moment, Pest was completely trembling. Chapter 1368. Blazing Flames City, the base of the Salamander community. In the palace of the Salamander community, at this moment, there were continuous howls and groans reverberating. Looking carefully, in the extremely vast hall, the members of Salamander community who had been injured in the previous battle with the giants were lying on stretchers one after another, almost filling the entire hall. The smell of medicine that permeated the air was quite strong. It was caused by the members who were lightly injured using medicine to heal their wounds. As for the members who were seriously injured, they were moved to the workshop equipped with healing gifts and treated one by one. However, the workshop equipped with healing gifts was just like the wards, it was also limited. In this way, the members who were seriously injured were still waiting to be healed, causing painful howls and groans to constantly reverberate in the hall. If this continued, it was likely that before they could be healed, the members who were seriously injured would die. Under such circumstances, the entire Salamandra was in a state of panic. In the end, it was Noah's appearance that gave Salamander community a ray of hope. Clang! A dazzling golden light surged out like a tide, covering the entire hall of Salamandra's palace in an instant. In the center of the hall, Noah raised the gorgeous golden scabbard called Avalon high, letting the dazzling golden light that blossomed from it spread out in all directions, covering the seriously injured members of Salamander community. Immediately, under the astonishing healing ability of Avalon, the injuries of the Salamander community members who were covered in blood and seriously injured gradually improved, and finally, they disappeared without a trace. Not long after, the seriously injured members of Salamander community who were groaning and groaning got up from the stretchers with astonished faces. They first looked at each other, then immediately cast a look of reverence and gratitude towards Noah's direction. The dazzling golden light that covered the entire hall slowly dissipated, and finally converged into the scabbard that Noah had raised up high. The scabbard that was originally exuding a dazzling brilliance suddenly became ordinary. Noah casually tossed it into a golden ripple that suddenly fluctuated beside him like a water wave. Seeing this, Shadora and Mandela, who were on standby at the side, quickly stepped forward. "Thank you very much for your help, Mr. Noah." Shadora bowed to Noah without losing her dignity and etiquette. "You really helped a lot." "Thank you." Mandela also bowed. If it wasn't for Noah, not long after, there would have been a lot of people who would have died because their injuries could not be healed. Therefore, Noah was completely worthy of this gratitude. However, Noah shook his head. "It's just a deal, I'm not helping you unconditionally. Don't forget, I will be receiving a reward." "We know." Shadora nodded seriously. "According to the agreed-upon reward, No Name will help Salamandra heal the seriously injured members, and Salamandra will provide No Name with many lifestyle gifts in the North District. We will prepare it as soon as possible." Mandela continued Shadora's words. "It won't take too long. Then there's no need to be too anxious." Noah waved his hand. "Currently, our community is focusing on the development of farms and ranches, and it will take some time for the quality of life to improve. I'm just making this deal with you just in case. So, when No Name needs it, you can send it over. It won't be too late." Hearing this, Shadora and Mandela couldn't help but admire him. Currently, the community was focusing on the development of farms and ranches, and Noah had already set his sights on further development and made preparations in advance. It had to be said that his vision for the big picture were indeed praiseworthy. If it was just that, then it would be fine. However, compared to this wisdom, Noah had an even more shocking power. That day, everyone in Salamandra who was in the City of Raging Flames clearly saw the scene of the giant phantom pulling down the huge dragon that covered the sky and fiercely smashing it to the ground. After that, everyone in Salamandra, who had witnessed that scene with their own eyes, was shocked when they learned that the giant phantom was Noah's power. It was easy to imagine how shocked they were. In addition, Noah had thousands of divine spark-grade weapons, and there was no lack of divine weapons among them. His endless means and unfathomable power had been deeply engraved in Shadora and Mandela's hearts. Now, in Shadora and Mandela's hearts, Noah was one of the people that they absolutely could not provoke. When they thought about how there was such a person in the community that they unilaterally abandoned in the past and reduced to the point where they didn't even have a flag or a name, Shadora and Mandela felt as if a bottle of mixed feelings had been knocked over. If it wasn't for the fact that the decision to abandon the alliance wasn't made by Shadora and Mandela, but by the previous leader of Salamandra, then Shadora and Mandela would probably be filled with regret right now. Right. Noah looked at Shadora. What about the other 2 areas that were attacked? Yes. Yes, the southern area seems to have repelled the Demon King together with a Dragonhorn Griffin Lion with the help of No Name. Now, just like the northern area, they are dealing with the aftermath. Shadora reacted and quickly responded. It is said that the eastern area was attacked the most, but because Lord White Yiksha returned the divine spark to Buddhism in time and retrieved the sealed power, the eastern area suffered the least damage. Is that so? Noah breathed a sigh of relief. That's good. However, White Yiksha can't be active in the lower level for long, right? Mandela said in a deep voice. Now that the divine spark has been returned to Buddhism, with White Yiksha's level, he can no longer continue to interfere with the lower level. Soon, he should be dismissed from his position as the leader of the hierarchy and return to the upper 3 digits, right? In other words, the strongest leader of the hierarchy would leave the lower level and could no longer provide protection for the lower level. For the lower level, no matter which area it was, this would be a huge blow, right? However, Noah only said indifferently. Don't worry. Since it's that guy, I'm sure he can find a suitable solution, right? Shadora and Mandela immediately perked up. They looked at each other and nodded. No matter what, he was the strongest leader of the hierarchy who had protected the lower level for a long time. Before he left, he would definitely come up with a corresponding countermeasure, right? At least, whether it was Noah, Shadora, or Mandela, they all believed so. After solving the problem of the injured, Noah directly separated from Shadora and Mandela, left the hall, and walked in the direction of Letitia's room. The giant dragon disappeared from the sky above Flame City, and Letitia's game was also solved. That was only yesterday. Therefore, Flame City was still in chaos, and there were still so many injured people in Salamandra. In order to deal with the aftermath, Shadora and Mandela would be busy in the future. Under such circumstances, it would be a little untactful to let them take care of him. Noah naturally would not do so. With this thought, Noah came outside Letitia's room. Just as Noah was about to push open the door, such a voice came from inside. No. Don't. Don't do this. Let me go. It's okay if you don't resist. Let me see your cute place, you. You better stop. If you do it again. Don't blame me for being rude. Oh. There was a reaction just now, right? It seems to be here, right? Wait. Not there. Such a cute reaction. Noah's hand that reached for the door handle was completely frozen there. Chapter 1369. The entire space sank into an indescribable silence. No. To be more precise, the only thing that had sunk into silence was the atmosphere. And the reason for such an atmosphere was the sound that constantly echoed from the inside of the room in front of Noah. At this moment, Noah was completely silent. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly, and he felt as if a storm had overturned in his heart. The graceful voices were very familiar to Noah. Without a doubt, those were Letitia and Pest's voices. However, based on the content of the graceful voices, Noah was truly unable to imagine what his 2 servants were doing in the room. That said, rather than saying that it was difficult to imagine, it would be more accurate to say that the reason why Noah was frozen in place was because the voices were capable of causing a healthy male to easily fantasize about such things. At this moment, Noah could only question himself in his heart. Could it be that Letitia and Pest were interested in that sort of thing? But that couldn't be right. Although they had not known each other for a long time, Noah believed that he knew Letitia and Pest quite well. At the very least, Noah knew about the personalities and characters of his two servants. Not to mention Letitia, just Pest alone made it very difficult for him to imagine that she would be interested in that sort of thing. After all, when she died from the Black Death, Pest's physical age was only 12 years old. Even though she continued to exist as an undead for quite some time after that and gathered over 80 million wraiths who had also died from the Black Death, it was impossible for her to develop any interest in going astray under such circumstances, right? Not to mention, after arriving at the Box Court, Pest became the Demon Queen and wholeheartedly wanted to take revenge on the sun. With that being the case, who would be able to imagine that Pest would be interested in that sort of thing? As for Letitia, Noah did not dare to be certain about that. As the successor to the throne of the vampire race, a high and mighty queen, it was not impossible for her to awaken an interest in that sort of thing due to her domineering nature. But was Letitia the same? He had never sensed any interest in that sort of thing before. If Letitia really had such tendencies, as her master, shouldn't he do something? For example, correcting him or something. No. Before that, shouldn't he confirm it first? Otherwise, if she was wronged for no reason, even Letitia would be angry, right? Therefore, the most important thing was to confirm. Thinking of this, Noah looked at the door handle in front of him with a grave expression. Now, Noah had two choices. 1. Directly push the door open and enter to confirm. 2. Turn around and leave. Pretend that he didn't discover anything and slowly investigate in the future. The former was undoubtedly the easiest way to confirm. However, once he made this choice, Noah had to be mentally prepared to lose something important. The latter was a more appropriate method of confirmation. With Noah's personality, if it was any other time, he would definitely choose the latter and carefully investigate. However, it was not in Noah's character to make a simple matter too complicated. What should he do? Noah was caught in a battle between heaven and man. At this time, an extremely calm and somewhat oppressive voice sounded from Noah's heart. Master, are you excited? As always, she hit the nail on the head, Asturchan. While Noah was in a state of speechlessness, the voice that made one think of an elegant and graceful voice continued to escalate. It seems that you can indeed be educated into a body that Master likes. Ugh, stop it, then, do you still dare to be disrespectful to Master in the future? No. I won't dare. I won't dare anymore, is that so? Then what if Master wants you to sleep with him? What? Oh. That means you're not willing, right? Wait. I'm willing. Okay. That's good, I'll let you go this time, Ugh. Devil. The devil among vampires. Hearing this, Noah finally couldn't stay calm anymore. Then, Astor innocently threw out such a sentence. Master, do you need me to sleep with you? No need. Noah couldn't help but raise his voice as he replied. Immediately after, all the movements in the room disappeared. Only at this time did Noah realize that his voice was loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. The corners of his eyes twitched. Then, he lowered his shoulders. What kind of sin have I committed? Roughly 5 minutes later, Noah was welcomed into the room. Inside the room, Letitia had changed into a blue and white maid uniform. She had the same cold and adorable expression as before as she stood in the corner. Pest was wearing the same blue and white maid uniform as Letitia. However, she was gnashing her teeth and her face was red. She had an appearance of gnashing her teeth as if she wanted to skin Noah alive. Seemingly noticing Pest's behavior, Letitia shot a sharp glare at her. Pest's body immediately trembled. She shrunk her neck and had an appearance of extreme fear. Evidently, due to Letitia's unknown teaching methods, this former demon king who possessed the position of the death god was completely afraid of Letitia. Now, even if Pest were to be allowed to sleep with Noah, this former demon king girl would likely have no choice but to admit defeat. Even the heavens would pity her. Before this, when Pest faced Letitia, she was at least able to feel a sense of superiority in terms of strength. Now that Letitia had retrieved her divine spark and completed her bestowment, her strength had instantly increased to 4 digits. She was even stronger than Pest. On top of that, she was also Noah's subordinate. Thus, regardless of whether it was her position in Noah's heart or the order of arrival, Letitia completely suppressed Pest. Before Letitia, Pest might truly have to forever lower her head. Unless, of course, Pest was to compete with Letitia for Noah's favor. As for surpassing Noah in terms of strength and fighting back against him, Pest no longer dared to think about it. After witnessing the scene of Noah easily dealing with Letitia's shadow that possessed a divine spark, after witnessing how Noah controlled the giant phantom to pull down the giant dragon from the sky, and after witnessing how Noah was able to stop the two-headed dragon's army all by himself, it would be strange if Pest still had such thoughts. Sure enough, she could only compete for his favor. Noah, who did not know what Pest was thinking, could only change the topic under the gazes of the 2 Lolita maids. Letitia, how do you feel? You can say that I've never felt better before. Letitia smiled. My original strength has all returned. The game has also been solved. Regardless of whether it is my body or my mind, my condition is extremely good. After saying those words, Letitia's expression immediately became serious. She looked straight at Noah. Although I have a lot of things I wish to say to Master, words of gratitude will never be enough. However, for allowing me, who should have met the end of my life with a miserable end, to be reborn, please allow me to turn this kindness into loyalty. I will slowly repay you in the future. Repay. Noah raised his brows and looked at Letitia with a faint smile on his face. In that case, how long do you plan to repay me? Letitia did not answer. Instead, she fixed her gaze on Noah. With light footsteps, she arrived before Noah and tugged at his clothes. Seeing this, Noah was somewhat puzzled. He followed Letitia's tug and knelt on one knee on the ground. He was at the same height as Letitia. Right at this moment, Letitia suddenly extended her hand and hugged Noah's neck. She pulled Noah toward her. Immediately after, her dark red lips pressed onto Noah's mouth. Feeling the soft sensation coming from his lips, Noah opened his eyes wide. In the next second, Letitia, who had her eyes tightly closed and was clearly kissing someone for the first time, boldly pried open Noah's mouth. She extended her tongue and tangled it with Noah's tongue. No one knew how long this scene lasted. After a long time, Letitia finally released Noah's lips. With a bewitching smile that did not match her appearance at all, she said, I swear this oath. With this oath, this body will forever belong to you. Her resolute words were deeply engraved into the hearts of everyone present. They would forever be branded. Chapter 1370. Chirp. The next day, Noah woke up under the kiss of soft lips that could make such a sucking sound. Today, Noah was no longer an ignorant person. The touch of the girl's soft lips was something he could clearly distinguish in his sober state. Moreover, other than the touch of the soft lips, Noah could also smell a pleasant fragrance. Although he was disgusted with himself for being able to clearly distinguish the source of the fragrance, Noah still sighed in his heart and opened his eyes. In the next moment, the naked elven girl sitting on top of Noah entered Noah's eyes. Master, you're finally awake. Bathed in the morning sun, her whole body was shining with white silver hair that reached her waist. Her skin was as white as milk, and her skin was as soft as pearls and ivory. She had a delicate figure that was both tender and beautiful at the same time. Her eyes carried a sense of mystery, making people feel like they could be sucked in at any time. Such an elven girl was sitting on top of Noah, looking down at Noah who was lying on the bed with an expressionless face. Then she bent down and once again kissed Noah's lips. "Good morning, Master." "Good morning, Aster." Noah suppressed the strong urge to say something and faintly sighed. "Should I say, as expected of Aster? No matter what, you're not wearing good clothes." "This is really hard to agree with." "It's not that I'm not wearing good clothes," Aster said with a calm expression that made people feel like she was deliberately suppressing her emotions. "I'm wearing good knee socks." Saying such a sentence, the cute elven girl gently lifted a pair of ivory smooth and beautiful thighs, as if she was deliberately showing them to Noah. And it had to be said, Noah who was lying there and being sat on by Aster, as the elven girl lifted her legs, he really saw what he should see and what he shouldn't see. If it was in the past, Noah would still feel awkward and flustered, right? Unfortunately, the same thing had happened too many times. Noah didn't even have the mood to complain, and could only sigh. "Why don't you realize that wearing only knee socks is worse?" Hearing this, Aster, who had been expressionless, was slightly shocked. Her beautiful face instantly turned pink. "In other words, Master wants me to take off my knee-high socks." "Really, really? Say it again." The same thing had happened so many times that Noah didn't even have the mood to complain anymore. At that moment, Noah said helplessly, "All right, Aster, I'm already up. Come down first, or I won't be able to get up." "Understood, Master." The shyness on Aster's face disappeared without a trace. It was as if everything was just an act. He placed his hand on Noah's chest and leaned forward. Then, "Master, good morning kiss." Hearing this, Noah pressed down on Aster's face. He narrowed his eyes and stared at Aster in annoyance. "Wasn't that just a good morning kiss?" "No," Aster said as if it was a matter of fact. "That's just for revenge." "Revenge?" Noah was stunned. "What revenge?" "Revenge for yesterday." Aster stared at Noah. "Master was kissed by Letitia yesterday. So, Aster wants it too." Noah choked and couldn't say anything. In the end, it was unknown if Aster had taken Noah's silence as unwillingness, but he stared at Noah with a pair of mysterious eyes. "Master was kissed by Letitia yesterday." Aster, who emphasized this, stared at Noah. "So, Aster wants it too." The corners of Noah's mouth twitched slightly when he saw the elf girl's emotionless expression, but he could vaguely sense a certain stubbornness. He could only bite the bullet and speak. That's just Letitia's way of thanking me." "Is that so?" Aster immediately said. "Then, I also want to thank Master." "But what do you want to thank me for?" Noah asked curiously. "Letitia did it because I saved her." "Then, it's the same for me," Aster said without changing his tone. "I was also saved by Master. Of course, I have the right to do so." If that was the case, then it was indeed the case. After all, as the highest elf and the strongest sword elf, Aster himself had a curse that required the contract target's life as the price. In other words, any elf messenger who could become Aster's master would eventually die under Aster's curse. Carrying such a curse and side effect, Aster even sealed himself and refused to communicate with any elven emissaries. Until Noah appeared. Noah, who could freely use Aster without paying any price, was undoubtedly the most suitable master for Aster. Forming a contract with Noah was also the best outcome for Aster. Otherwise, Aster would never be able to form a contract with the elf messenger freely. It was very likely that he would live in loneliness and sorrow forever. Therefore, it was not an exaggeration to say that Noah had saved Aster from this situation. I am Master's sword, and also Master's contracted elf. Aster looked straight at Noah. I think it's reasonable for you to make such a request. Seeing Aster's unquestionable attitude, Noah, who had nothing to say, could only bitterly laugh. I understand, as you wish. Aster's youthful face showed some unnoticeable clarity. Then, she moved closer to Noah. Please close your eyes, Master. Looking at Aster's face that was getting closer and closer, Noah thought absent-mindedly while feeling the softness of the girl's lips and the touch of her tongue. What is this? 10 minutes later, Noah, who had satisfied his contracted elf who loved to throw a tantrum and get jealous, brought the small silver sword out of the room. To be more precise, it should be said that he came out of the bedroom. As the host, Salamandra had prepared a small suite with 3 bedrooms and a living room for Noah. This was Noah's request. The main reason was that he did not want to keep Letitia and Pest in the gift cards and rings and take up a room for themselves. Since the conditions allowed it, it was not a bad thing to let Letitia, Pest, and Aster each have their own room. In this regard, Letitia and Pest also agreed. They were not willing to stay in the cold gift cards and rings. Only Aster insisted on following Noah no matter what. She requested that Noah carry her with him at all times. However, Aster was different from Letitia and Pest. She did not need to enter the gift cards or rings. She could transform into the form of a weapon and be carried by Noah. So, if that was the case, there was no difference. In the living room, Letitia had prepared breakfast and black tea. Are you awake, Master? Although I only woke up because of the prank of my cute contracted elf. As Noah said this, he sat in front of the breakfast and black tea table in a very natural manner. He picked up the black tea and took a sip. Pest hasn't come back yet. Not yet, Letitia closed her eyes and said in a very natural manner. However, it's about time for her to come back. If she still doesn't come back, I'll have to say that she is incompetent and properly educate her from the beginning. Right after his words left his mouth, a flustered and exasperated voice sounded. Don't always think of educating me. A black wind suddenly swept up in the living room and Pest's figure appeared from it. I'm not a toy. Aw. Letitia had an expression as if nothing had happened as she looked at Pest. You're back. You're back. Noah also looked in Pest's direction. In other words, you've completed the task I gave you, right? Pest let out a soft humph and turned her head away. However, she still took out several items and placed them on the table before Noah. Those items were actually several short blades. Seeing those short blades, Noah smiled. Chapter 1371. Looking at the several short knives that were neatly arranged on the table, Letitia revealed a puzzled expression. Then, she looked to Pest. Is there something wrong with these weapons? How would I know? Pest had a serious expression on her adorable little face. I am merely acting according to orders. I have never heard of any reason for doing so. Yesterday, before going to sleep, Noah had specially instructed Pest to do something. That was to retrieve these short knives from Raging Flame Capital. Letitia also knew about this matter. However, Letitia had no idea why Noah wanted to retrieve these short knives. Originally, Letitia had thought that there was something special about these weapons. However, upon closer inspection, Letitia was unable to discover what was so special about these weapons. They did not appear to be powerful weapons made of extremely rare metals, nor did they appear to be weapons bestowed with some sort of grace. They were merely a few ordinary short knives. However, if these short knives were truly ordinary weapons, why would Noah want to retrieve them? It must be because there was something special about these weapons. Wasn't that so? With that thought in mind, Letitia was rejected by Noah with a chuckle in the next second. Enough. Don't think too much about it. There is nothing special about these weapons. It's just that the owners of these weapons are indeed somewhat special to us. After saying those words, Noah picked up one of the short knives. While toying with it, he spoke in an unhurried manner. These weapons were all thrown at me by that white-haired brat who called himself His Highness when I was fighting against him. In a moment of desperation, that little girl called Ling threw them at me in order to save His Highness from me. His Highness. Ling. Letitia frowned. Are they the two people who controlled the giant clan to attack Raging Flame Capital and use me to unlock the sealed game? Your Highness. Ling. Pest's eyes flickered. She lowered her head and sank into silence. Although I don't know the true origins of those two brats, I can be sure that they have a place in the Demon King Alliance that launched attacks on the east, south, and north regions at the same time. Noah twirled the small knife in his hand and smiled faintly as if he had an ulterior motive. On top of that, they even attacked my subordinates. Thus, I should have sufficient reason to continue finding trouble with them, right? Hearing Noah's words, Letitia and Pest were both startled. Then, they reacted. In other words, Pest asked with uncertainty. You told me to retrieve these weapons so that we can find His Highness and Ling. Is that possible? Letitia spoke in surprise. Are you going to find them by relying on these weapons? Of course it won't work if we just rely on these weapons, Noah said. Thus, we will have to add this. After saying those words, Noah extended his hand. Buzz. Amidst the slight tremor in the space, golden ripples spread out and absorbed Noah's hand that was reaching out. Noah extended his hand into the wave-like golden ripples and took out a backpack. Surprisingly, it was the infinite backpack. After opening the infinite backpack, Noah extended his hand into the backpack that was flickering with fluorescent light. The interior of the backpack could not be seen at all. After searching around for a while, he took out a scroll. After placing the scroll on the table, Noah put away the infinite backpack and tossed it back into the wave-like golden ripples. He allowed the golden ripples to shrink and disappear into space. At this moment, Letitia and Pest's attention was completely attracted by the scroll on the table. The existence of Noah's Gate of Babylon was no longer a secret. Now, those who had some understanding of Noah knew that he possessed a peculiar space that stored over 1,000 types of divine spark-grade bestowment equipment and mystical bestowment items. He was able to manipulate them at will. This was especially true for the members of No Name. They had witnessed Noah taking out many mystical items and items from the Gate of Babylon countless times. It allowed the recovery of the lands and the community base to become much smoother. In such a situation, Letitia and Pest would naturally not ignore the scroll Noah took out. Could it be that if they wanted to find Her Highness and Belle, they would only need to rely on this scroll? With this thought in mind, Letitia and Pest both cast curious and probing gazes at the scroll made of parchment on the table. Before Letitia and Pest, Noah picked up the scroll. This scroll contains a bestowment called Object Location. As for its effect, I don't think I need to tell you. You should know just from the name, right? Hearing that, Letitia and Pest immediately understood what was going on. Object Location. That's right. There was no need for any explanation at all. They could tell what its effect was just from its name. If its effect was really the same as its name, then Letitia and Pest would be able to understand what Noah was trying to do. That little girl named Belle must be carrying these weapons on her, right? Noah twirled the scroll in his hand and said in a playful manner. Since that's the case, I will be able to find her using this scroll. Letitia and Pest immediately understood what was going on. Although the magic scroll called Object Location was capable of finding the location of specific objects, the object must satisfy 4 conditions before it could be searched. First, it must not be an object that was too general. For example, clothes, shoes, gloves, and other general objects that could be carried by ordinary people would not be able to be searched using the object location. Second, the user must have a certain level of knowledge about the object being searched. For example, if Belle's weapon had any special effects, the person using the object location must know about it. Even if the weapon did not have any special effects, the person using the object location must know about it. Otherwise, the person would not be able to find it. It was because of this that Noah had Pest bring Belle's weapon over. He wanted to confirm its shape and appearance so as to deepen his impression of it. Only then would he be able to find the target. Third, the object being searched for must have been in close contact with the user. If the object had never appeared before the user, even if the object being searched for was not of a general nature and the user had a clear understanding of it, the user would still not be able to locate it. Fourth, an object that has been located once cannot be located a second time. In other words, once the object location was used to search for Belle's weapon, the user would not be able to locate the same object again. When the four conditions were satisfied, Noah would be able to use the object location magic scroll to find the object's location. As long as he could find Belle's weapon, he would be able to prove that Belle was at that location. Of course, if the object's location is too far away, there is a possibility that the location will fail. Noah narrowed his eyes. On the other hand, if those fellows continue to linger in the vicinity, then they can consider themselves unlucky. After saying that, Noah tossed the magic scroll in his hand. Bang! The scroll made of parchment immediately burst into flames. It was burned to ashes by the blue flames. At the location of the burnt scroll, strands of star-like particles swirled into Noah's head like a vortex, causing a scene to appear in Noah's mind. The scene that appeared in his mind was like this. It was a large hall. It was a large hall with 5 doors at the front and a parchment pasted on the wall. In this large hall, 5 figures slowly appeared. They were Her Highness, Belle, and 3 other people that Noah did not recognize. According to the location and scene displayed by the object location, Noah opened his eyes. A mocking expression appeared in his eyes. They are actually in a place like that. They are truly courting death. Letitia and Pest were immediately stunned. Ignoring Letitia and Pest's reaction, Noah stood up and said indifferently, "Let's go. Let's go hunt those ungrateful rats." Chapter 1372. Box 54545 Outer Gate, Blazing Flame City. As a city governed by the community Salamandra, the headquarters of Salamandra in Blazing Flame City was a palace made up of 12 palaces. In the center of the palace, there was a place called the 5th Palace of the Right Wing. The 5th Palace of the Right Wing was the core of Salamandra. When the giant tribe invaded and the giant dragons wreaked havoc in the sky of Blazing Flame City, this palace provided shelter for those who could not fight to gather and wait for the disaster to pass. Therefore, even though the war had ended, in the 5th Palace of the Right Wing, there were still some civil officials who were whispering uneasily. They passed by this place and walked towards the corridors in all directions. No one noticed. In a hidden passage in the innermost part of the palace, a few figures suddenly appeared. The newcomers were 5 people wearing long robes that completely covered their faces. They were the members of the Demon King Alliance led by His Highness who planned to attack the East, South, and North regions. As soon as the 5 of them appeared, they raised their heads and looked at the end of the tunnel. There was a bronze statue there. Ling, His Highness lowered his voice. "It's here, right?" "That's right." Ling nodded and said to Old Gu, "Push it away and don't make any noise." Hearing this, Old Ge's face that was hidden under the hood showed a trace of dissatisfaction. How can pushing away such a small thing make any noise? After saying this, Gulao directly stepped forward and used only one hand to hold the heavy bronze statue tightly. Without any effort and without making the slightest sound, he easily pushed the bronze statue away. Although the phantasmagoric beasts were not a race with extraordinary strength, they still had a lot of innate advantages compared to the ordinary human race. As a griffin beast, Elder Gu naturally had the ability to effortlessly push away a bronze statue that was extremely heavy for humans. Even if he used the humanization technique and turned into a human's appearance, it was still the same. As Old Gu pushed the bronze statue away, a spiral staircase appeared in front of the five of them. Seeing the spiral staircase, the mood of everyone present, including His Highness, soared. Because, under this spiral staircase, not only was there the seal of the most ferocious Demon King, there was also the Demon King Alliance, which was what His Highness and the others dreamed of. "Let's go in quickly," Ling quickly said. "Old Gu, you stay behind. After we all go in, you can put the bronze statue back to its original position. Don't let anyone find out." After speaking, Ling did not even give Gu Lao a chance to reply. She hurried the group into the spiral tunnel. Maxwell said in displeasure when he saw Belle's cautious behavior. "Is there a need to be so careful? After all, there aren't many people here who are our opponents. Why don't we just directly?" Compared to His Highness, Belle, Elder Gu, Aurora, and the others, Maxwell did not seem to be cautious at all. On the contrary, he was so relaxed that it made people suspect that he was not here to infiltrate, but to travel. Such a performance was due to Maxwell's confidence in his own strength. Maxwell was convinced. In this 5-digit outer court, there was no one he could not deal with. Seeing this confidence, Ling only twitched her mouth. "I know you're a 4-digit Demon King and are very powerful. Even if Salamandra were to move out, they would not be able to do anything to you. However, I have to remind you that Salamandra is not the only one here. The person who made His Highness suffer a great loss is also here. In order to allow His Highness to recover from his injuries, the Demon King Alliance had delayed until now to take action." According to the information, Noah had not left the Blazing Flame capital and was even in the palace of Salamandra. In other words, Noah was close to the place where His Highness and the others had broken into. If they were not careful and were discovered by Noah, they would be in big trouble. After seeing with her own eyes how Noah effortlessly defeated His Highness, Ling had to be cautious. However, Maxwell obviously did not take it to heart. He only gave a perfunctory reply. Under Ling's lead, they moved down the spiral staircase. Tap. 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 In the silent spiral staircase, the sound of footsteps was extremely clear. There was no light in the staircase. Even the foothold was a little old, making people wonder if it would collapse at any time. His Highness and the others took out lamps from their gift cards one after another and continued to move forward. However, after walking for a full 20 minutes, they still could not see the end of the spiral staircase. The surrounding environment was also the same. His Highness and the others suppressed the anxiety in their hearts and subconsciously held their breaths as they walked down silently. It was not until 30 minutes later that the scene in front of the spiral staircase began to change. His Highness and the others walked down the last step and came to a hall. It was a hall with the words, "Between the Stars," written on it. In the hall, there was not only a piece of parchment on the wall at the front, but also 5 doors. His Highness and the others suddenly looked at each other and then focused their eyes on Ling. Ling immediately understood and went straight to the front of the parchment on the wall. Taking a closer look, it was a contract document. The contents of the contract document were as follows. Gift game, in the Sea of Stars, dragon someone who has crossed the Sea of Stars. Choose the door you ask for and show your proof. The first door, the initial star gave birth to many stars, and then new stars were born one after another. The second door, the collision of stars turned into the flesh and blood of new stars. The third door, the new era that will soon come will awaken spring in the stars. The fourth door, the land of stars swayed, and the god of grains celebrated. The fifth door, the pulse of the earth attracted the water of new life, welcoming the strongest age. Someone who has crossed the sea of stars. The two tentacles are the pointer. Without the tentacles, you can't cross the sea. Someone who has crossed the sea of stars. Please think twice. Unlock the star map, and the sea of stars will be divided into 3. Unwilling to let the ominous star shine, so bind the disaster to sleep here. But pray for a permanent sleep. Star Sea Dragon King Seal. Wow, it's super simple. After reading the contents of the contract document, Ling let out a sigh and then went to the fifth door without hesitation. Your Highness, only this door can lead to the location of the seal. The other 4 doors are either fake or have traps, so you can't just barge in. You solved the puzzle so quickly. His Highness asked in surprise. As expected of Ling, since you found it, then hurry up and go in. Maxwell said impatiently. Why are you dilly-dallying? Is that so? Ling raised an eyebrow and stepped aside. If that's the case, then you go in first, how about it? Maxwell immediately shut his mouth. At least you have some common sense. Ling snorted and took out a package from under the black robe, and took out a dragon horn-like item from the package. There's a curse inside. If you don't have the Star Sea Dragon King's horn, even if you're a 4-digit demon king, you won't be able to reach the destination. The Star Sea Dragon King's horn. Aurora exclaimed. You're lucky to have gotten it. In order to get it, I had to sacrifice the demon king's life in front of Shadora. It wasn't easy for me to cut off a piece of the dragon horn of the young ruler of the caste, Ling reminded him again and again. So, you guys have to follow me closely. Don't fall behind. Everyone, including His Highness, nodded. Then, the group of people walked into the fifth door. But after walking for a while, they finally reached the end of the room. There was a sunken pedestal there that looked like it had to be embedded with something. Seeing this pedestal, the eyes of Her Highness and the others bloomed with a strange light. Chapter 1373. Just as the sunken platform that looked like it had to be embedded into something appeared in front of His Highness group, the package in Belle's hand and the dragon horn of the Starsea Dragon King bloomed with a faint light at the same time. This light made His Highness group, whose eyes were shining with a strange light, return to their senses and look at the package in Belle's hand. Belle seemed to be taken aback, but then she understood. So that's how it is. Because the shackle and the key are gathered together, they have a reaction to each other. In other words, we have indeed come to the right place, right? His Highness smiled slightly and then became serious. Then, Belle, can you unlock the seal? There should be no problem, Belle said with a rare tone of not much confidence. There are 2 keys needed to unlock the seal. One is the horn of the Starsea Dragon King, and the other is the flag of the leader of the Alliance who led the community army to seal the oldest demon king 200 years ago. Belle raised the Starsea Dragon King's horn and the package in her hand. Now, both keys are in our hands. The problem is that the Starsea Dragon King's horn is incomplete. Even if we meet the requirements, it should take a long time to unlock the seal, right? Then let's finish it as soon as possible. His Highness gave the order without hesitation. We have to race against time. Let's start unlocking the seal now. Understood. Belle immediately showed a serious expression. She stepped forward and spread out the package in her hand that was faintly glowing. The next moment, the package appeared in front of everyone. It was actually a flag. On one side was a flag with a base of red cloth and a border of gold. Since it was a flag, it naturally had the pattern that a flag should have. The pattern on the red flag was a young girl with hills and earth as the background, as if yearning for freedom. If a knowledgeable person were to see this flag, he or she would definitely be shocked. Because in the past, this flag had once dominated a region, and was rather famous in other regions. It had even formed an alliance with several four-digit top communities, and together, they went on a punitive expedition against the Demon King that was wreaking havoc in the Box Court. This included the oldest Demon King that was known as the final trial of humanity. The oldest Demon King that was sealed here was also defeated by the alliance led by this community. The reason why Salamandra was sealed in Blazing Flame Capital was because Salamandra was once a member of this alliance. The community named Salamandra was once a top-class existence in the four communities. However, ever since 200 years ago, Salamandra had participated in the battle against the oldest Demon King in the final trial of the human race. Its vitality had been greatly damaged. Later, as the leader of various famous communities that could even seal the oldest Demon King, the community that was the flag in Belle's hand was attacked and disintegrated. Salamandra was finally reduced to 5 communities. Even so, Salamandra was a community that had participated in the crusade against the oldest Demon King. The oldest Salamandras, Salamandra was Salamandra communities. Was Salamandra's SS communities. In view of this, as the symbol of Salamandra, the Star Sea Dragon King's horn was one of the keys to unlocking the seal. As for the other key, it was naturally the flag of the community that had united the various top-class communities and formed the alliance that could even suppress the oldest Demon King. At this moment, both keys were gathered in Belle's hand. Just as Belle was about to embed the Star Sea Dragon King's horn on the pedestal and raise the flag of a young girl yearning for freedom, an extremely shocking pressure suddenly filled the entire space. His Highness, Belle, Elder Gu, Aurora, and Maxwell all froze on the spot. The shocking pressure directly pressed down on the bodies of His Highness and the others, causing the 5 of them to feel their bodies sink. It was as if their entire bodies were being pressed down a little, and their hearts trembled slightly. However, this had instead completely awakened His Highness and the others. The 5 of them immediately turned around and looked at the passage in front of them where the shocking pressure was coming from. Over there, a person was taking strong and powerful steps, walking towards them step by step. Pretty lively, huh? A leisurely voice mixed with some coldness slowly sounded. Why don't you let me join in? Accompanied by such a sentence, the full appearance of this person, whose entire body carried an astonishing pressure, causing the 5 of them to momentarily forget to react, entered everyone's field of vision. When His Highness saw who it was, his face suddenly trembled. Belle was also shocked and took a step back. It's you. The person was Noah. Upon seeing the 5 black-robed figures standing in front of the unknown pedestal, Noah came to a stop and swept his gaze across them. When Noah's gaze swept across them, whether it was His Highness, Belle, Elder Gu, Aurora, or Maxwell, they couldn't help but feel their hearts skip a beat. Why? Belle couldn't stand the pressure and yelled out loud. Why are you here? Upon hearing this, Noah ignored Belle and turned to look at the glowing dragon horn and flag in his hand. His pair of eyes narrowed slightly. It seems that there is indeed something powerful sealed here. Are you guys finally thinking about it? Previously, His Highness mentioned that there was a terrifying existence sealed in the land of brilliant flames. Noah didn't forget about this matter. The reason why he was so anxious to find His Highness and the others, apart from avenging Letitia, was also because of this. Now, it seemed that Noah's abject positioning was the best time to discover the whereabouts of His Highness and the others. Manipulating the giants to attack this city, letting the 2-headed dragons attack the East District, and even the South District was attacked by you guys. All of my companions were involved in this, causing chaos in the East, South, and North Districts. Noah's gaze shot towards His Highness like lightning. Even so, are you guys still not satisfied? As soon as he finished speaking, an even more powerful aura burst out from Noah's body, causing His Highness and the others to almost be unable to breathe. Feeling the terrifying aura, not to mention His Highness and Belle, Elder Gu, Aurora, and Maxwell, the three of them all had extremely ugly expressions. Damn it! Elder Gu clenched his fists tightly, but his palms were sweating. Who is this guy? Could he be the one who seriously injured His Highness? Aurora's entire body trembled slightly. What a terrifying aura. Only Maxwell's expression wasn't that bad, but he was still shocked by Noah's shocking aura, and his expression was ugly. It was only then that the three of them realized what kind of existence this person that Her Highness and Belle were afraid of was. This was especially true for Maxwell. Before this, he simply didn't care about Noah seriously injuring His Highness and dealing with the giant dragons. He also didn't care about Noah. But now, he was fiercely shocked by Noah, and the shock and regret in his heart were instantly aroused. At this moment, Letitia and Pest walked over from the end of the tunnel. Inadvertently, Letitia saw the shining flag in Belle's hand. When she saw the flag, Letitia was first startled, then her eyes widened. She was so excited that even her body started trembling. That flag. Sensing Letitia's excitement, His Highness and the others cried out in their hearts. Noah was the only one who asked in confusion. What's wrong? Letitia. Moss. Master. Letitia was so excited that she couldn't even speak clearly. That's the flag of our community. His words made Noah raise his eyebrows in surprise. What? What did you say? That's our flag. Our flag. Letitia couldn't help but shout in excitement. The flag that our no-name lost 3 years ago. Chapter 1374. Once upon a time, before their flag and name were taken away, and even their companions were taken away, the existence known as No Name was the most powerful community in the Eastern District. Noah had learned about this from the Black Rabbit on the first day he came to the Box Court. Since then, Noah had also learned about the past glory of No Name from other people countless times, and lamented that such a community had fallen to such a state many times. However, Noah did not know that the community that was derisively called No Name had, in fact, accomplished more and greater things. For example, they united the most powerful communities in each district of the Box Court and formed a great alliance to fight against the Demon King. For example, 200 years ago, they led the Great Alliance to raise the flag of the oldest Demon King, who was known as the final trial of mankind and was a level lower than the 3 strongest races of the Box Court. For example, they had integrated the rulers of the social classes in each region into the alliance, developing it into an unprecedentedly powerful organization. Another example was that they could even seal the oldest Demon King, allowing the entire Box Court to get rid of the terrifying threat. One after another, astonishing results made the community of No Name's predecessor famous throughout the world in various ways. Unfortunately, this glory came to an end 3 years ago. In other words, the most ancient Demon King that was sealed under the City of Raging Flame was the Great Alliance led by the community that was the predecessor of No Name. The flag that could break this seal was the flag of No Name that was taken away. What did this mean? This meant that His Highness group of people who held this flag, or more accurately, should be the Demon King Alliance that united various Demon Kings and had the ability to attack the East, South, and North, was the organization that defeated the Demon King, No Name, 3 years ago. I should have known. Noah closed his eyes slightly, and the pressure that emerged from his body became even more intense. 3 years ago, Letitia, who was taken away by the Demon King, willingly gave up her godhood in exchange for a short period of freedom in order to return to the community. Since you can let Letitia's godhood return and break the seal of Letitia's game, that proves that the Demon King who took away Letitia is one of you. I should have known. Really? So it's you. Letitia stared at His Highness group with remorse. Are you the ones who destroyed our community? His Highness and the others remained silent. However, this silence did not last for long. Belle seemed to be the first to calm down. She took a deep breath and looked at Noah. Since you found me, there's nothing I can do. Things really didn't go so smoothly. His Highness also smiled leisurely, but his gaze never left Noah. He spoke to Belle without turning his head. Ling, leave this to us. Go and complete your mission. Mission. Letitia looked at the Starseed Dragon King's horn and the Freedom Maiden flag in Belle's arms. She finally thought of something and turned pale with fright. You. Could it be that you intend to undo the Demon King's seal? The humans who were sealed here were the final trials of the human race, and the one who had done this was the Great Alliance led by the predecessor of No Name. At that time, Letitia was also a member of No Name who had not been stripped of their flag and title. She also participated in the battle to seal the humans in the final trial 200 years ago. Therefore, the moment she saw the Starseed Dragon King's horn and the Freedom Maiden flag in Belle's hands, Letitia immediately understood the plan of His Highness and the others. Don't even think about succeeding. Letitia tore the ribbon from the back of her head. Clank. Suddenly, Letitia's entire body bloomed with light. Her body's outline gradually elongated in the light. Finally, she turned into an extremely mature and coquettish girl. Master! Letitia shouted. We have to stop them. Ling! His Highness also shouted. Do it! However, the one who reacted to His Highness' words was Elder Gu. Roeawea dash. Elder Gu tore off the black robe on his body and roared towards the sky. His entire body seemed to explode, and along with a burst of dazzling light, he turned into a pitch-black, gigantic griffin. Bang! In the next moment, a muffled explosion sounded. That was the sound of the pitch-black griffin suddenly charging forward and stomping on the ground. Whoosh! The black griffin directly turned into a bullet that was shot out of the barrel. With a sharp piercing sound in the air, it suddenly charged in Noah's direction. Bang! In the interstellar space, inside the fifth door, a burst of explosive flames suddenly shook. Carrying a powerful shockwave, it surged out from the passage inside the door and instantly illuminated the entire vast hall. In the midst of the explosive flames, Noah, Letitia, and Pest quickly retreated and arrived in the interstellar space. The pitch-black griffin also charged out of the explosive flames and continued to madly charge toward Noah and the others without slowing down. Behind the pitch-black griffin, His Highness, Aurora, and Maxwell also flew out, arriving in the sea of stars. Only Ling was still nowhere to be seen. Clearly, that young girl was undoing the seal of the final trial. After understanding this, Letitia unfolded a pair of wings made of shadows and flew toward the fifth door. Unfortunately, the pitch-black griffin stepped on the air and mercilessly charged toward Letitia's direction with a violent gust of wind. Where do you plan to go? TSK. Letitia let out a somewhat anxious and speechless sound. She could only stop and angrily glare at Elder Gu. Since that's the case, I'll deal with you first. Ha 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 ha. Elder Gu laughed out loud. If you can do it, then give it a try. Demon King Dracula. After saying those words, the purebred vampire controlled her shadows. Like an overflowing black wave, the shadows collided with the charging pitch-black griffin. On the other side, Pest, whose entire body was surrounded by black wind, was floating in midair. She first glanced at the battlefield where Letitia and Gulao were at. Soon after, she sensed something and turned her head to look ahead. At that place, Aurora, who was still wearing a black gown and dressed like a witch, was raising her harp to meet Pest's gaze. Seeing Aurora raising her harp, Pest's expression remained completely calm. Her body was surrounded by black winds. Her blue and white maid outfit gradually changed shape in the black winds, turning into a dress with black and white flower patterns. Her appearance was exactly the same as the Black Death Spot Demon King who attacked the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony a month ago. Even though Noah and Letitia had given her all sorts of cruel and inhumane education, causing Pest to feel like crying countless times, that was only when she was facing Noah and Letitia that she was unable to display her disappointing side. When facing outsiders, Pest, who was both a god and a demon king, would forever have this sort of ice-cold appearance. That said, to Pest, the person before her was not necessarily an outsider. Under such circumstances, Aurora smiled faintly and said such a sentence. "Long time no see, little Pest. You don't seem to be disgusted by the fact that you've switched sides to a no name. If that is truly what you think, then I must doubt your eyesight, Aurora," Pest replied calmly. Her tone was one that would only be used when meeting someone she knew. "It's just that I am unable to go against my current master." "Is that so? Do you still need our help?" Aurora said with a smile on her face. "No matter what, when you were a demon king, you were our companion. If we can help you, we will definitely not be stingy." Pest's eyes flashed. That's right. When she was still a demon king, Pest was also a member of the Demon King Alliance. Pest was no stranger to His Highness, Bel and the Demon King Alliance that defeated No Name. Even though she did not come into contact with the core secrets, Pest knew His Highness and the others. Thus, what Aurora said was correct. Chapter 1375. Actually, it was not surprising for Pest to become a member of the Demon King Alliance. After all, the goal of the Demon King Alliance was the sovereignty of the suns. As the representative of the 80 million undead that died because of the sun's laziness, it was impossible for Pest, who possessed the authority to seal the suns, to not be invited by the Demon King Alliance. If one thought about it carefully, one would understand. If the person who obtained victory in the Fire Dragon birth ceremony a month ago was Pest, then, according to the rules of the game, the White Yiksha would have become Pest's subordinate. In that case, the sovereignty of the 14 sons that the White Yiksha possessed would have all fallen into Pest's hands and even the Demon King Alliance's hands. Thus, it was not strange for Pest to become a chess piece of the Demon King Alliance. Although Pest's attack a month ago ended in failure, to the Demon King Alliance that coveted the sovereignty of the suns, Pest's existence was still very tempting. Although you've already become someone else's subordinate, that is, in the end, nothing more than the restriction of the contract. Since it is a contract, there will definitely be a way to remove it. Even if it is a contract set up by the box court itself, it is the same. Aurora said in a seductive tone. You wouldn't want to become someone's errand boy for a mere no name, right? Then, how about you return to our side? The people above will definitely not mind helping you find a way to remove the contract. Hearing those words, Pest grew silent. Remove the contract. To Pest, this could indeed be considered as a temptation. Originally, Pest was different from Aster and Letitia. She was not willing to become Noah's subordinate and be used by Noah. Instead, she was defeated by Noah in the game. Due to the rules of the box court, she became the servant of the victor using the identity of a demon king. Under such circumstances, how could Pest possibly be willing to become someone else's subordinate? Had it been when she was first summoned by Noah and formed a subordinate contract with Noah, Pest would have accepted Aurora's temptation without the slightest hesitation. However, now, there were many things for Pest to consider. Hey, Aurora, Pest suddenly asked. This time, which area are you responsible for attacking in the east, south, and north at the same time? Pest's sudden question startled Aurora for a moment. Then, she answered honestly. Glea and I were in charge of attacking the South District. His Highness and Bel were originally going to the South District, but they changed their plans midway and came to the North District. As for the East District, that narcissistic clown was in charge of attacking it. Greya was the Black Griffin, which was also Elder Ge's real name. The narcissistic clown was, of course, Maxwell. The Southern District. Pest nodded and spoke with a calm expression. Then you probably don't know that the two-headed dragon army you used to attack the East District was actually stopped by my current master alone before they came into contact with White Yiksha, right? WH. What? Aurora was stunned for a moment. Then, she sucked in a breath of cold air and exclaimed. Impossible. Other than the White Knight King. How could there be anyone in the Eastern District who could stop the three-headed demonic dragon's army of clones alone? There are still the bodies of the first generation of gods in there. As expected, it's very hard to believe, right? Pest shrugged and spoke in a self-mocking manner. In the beginning, I also found it very hard to believe. However, this is the truth. Otherwise, why do you think His Highness and Belle are so afraid of my master? It's because he possesses strength that surpasses our imaginations. This. Aurora did not know what to say. You should have noticed it long ago, Pest said. How could someone who could defeat the strongest pure-blooded dragon species be simple? But that enormous dragon does not possess intelligence. It only knows how to act with its wild nature. It is simply unable to display the true battle prowess of one of the strongest species in the box court, Aurora refuted. For a pure-blooded dragon species like that, as long as there is a method capable of injuring it, even we would be able to deal with it. You said it yourself. You must have a method capable of injuring it, Pest said calmly. However, other than His Highness and that narcissistic clown, is there anyone among you capable of doing so? Aurora was speechless. As for Pest, she lowered her head. Her eyes began to flicker. Besides, I feel that this is not his limit. He is most definitely still concealing an even greater power. That is what the contract in my body is telling me. A subordinate contract was a contract that would allow the dominated to resist to a certain extent when the dominated was stronger than the dominant. However, the dominated would also weaken the dominant. Because of that, Pest was able to faintly sense the difference in strength between her and her master through the contract in her body. It was as if Pest was looking down at a bottomless abyss. It was a disparity that she could not touch at all. In the past, Pest had not noticed this disparity. However, after witnessing the tip of the iceberg of Noah's strength, Pest finally had this feeling. Her intuition told her that it was practically impossible for her to surpass Noah in terms of strength. Besides, a subordinate contract is one of the laws of the box court to begin with. This sort of binding force is something that even those existences at the apex of the box court would not be able to disobey, no? Pest said in an extremely calm manner. Are those people from the Demon King's alliance truly capable of finding a way to break this sort of contract? Finding a way to disobey the laws of the box court? I don't think that's the case. Aurora immediately grew silent. After a while, Aurora sighed. In other words, due to these considerations, our negotiations have failed, right? It is not only due to these considerations, a beautiful yet wicked smile appeared on Pest's face. More importantly, although I am unwilling to admit it, I have seen more possibilities from that guy compared to when he was on your side. That possibility even surpasses Her Highness. In terms of future prospects, don't you think that I should choose my current master? Is that so? Aurora smiled. Merely, that smile of hers was somewhat ice-cold. Do you think that is a wise choice? Who knows? Pest said calmly. In any case, I have already become that guy's subordinate. Furthermore, that guy will not lose to Her Highness. In fact, he is currently far stronger than Her Highness. In that case, it shouldn't be hard to tell which side I should choose, right? Is that so? The smile on Aurora's face completely disappeared. The harp in her hand blossomed with a dazzling radiance. Since that's the case, allow me to make you feel regret. Very well. Allow me to vent my resentment from being bullied by my rude and unreasonable master and my comrades for so long. Pest smiled sweetly. Her entire body shook with violent black winds. I am looking forward to it. Aurora. Another great battle was about to erupt. While Letitia was fighting against Glea and Pest was fighting against Aurora, the curtains to the third battle in the Sea of Stars had also been raised. Whing! Accompanied by the sound of space trembling, a bone-chilling cold current descended from the sky like a blizzard. Accompanied by ear-piercing whistling sounds, it was like a waterfall that enveloped everything below. At that place, Noah raised his head to look at the enormous cold current descending from the sky. A dim light flashed through his pitch-black eyes. Cold air. It shouldn't be only at this level, right? After saying those words, Noah raised his fist. Facing the overwhelming cold current that enveloped him, he threw a punch forward without the slightest hesitation. Bang! The collision between the enormous cold current and the tiny fist gave rise to a heavy explosive sound. The space and the Sea of Stars exploded from the punch. The cold current instantly filled the surroundings. Everywhere the cold current passed through, everything would be covered in ice. Chee! At this moment, the sound of air being torn apart resounded from the cold current that was spreading in all directions. A black silhouette rushed out from the cold current and instantly arrived before Noah. In the next instant, a fist that contained a frightening amount of power smashed heavily toward Noah's head. It was a killing move right from the start. Chapter 1376. Her Highness' strength was indeed not to be underestimated. Although she was forced to retreat by Noah's authority in the first two battles, and was defeated by Noah's authority in the second battle, she was nearly killed by Noah. However, that was not because Her Highness was too weak. Instead, it was because Noah broke the rules even more than Her Highness. After all, Her Highness possessed a terrifying physical ability second only to that of 16 Knights Reversal. Apart from this, Her Highness also possessed the gift of invulnerability that could repel even weapons of the Divine Spark grade. Furthermore, Her Highness was concealing an unknown trump card. If one were to use the box court's ranking system to classify them, Her Highness would definitely have a 4-digit ranking. As for Maxwell, although Noah did not even know his name, he was able to tell that he did not go to deal with Letitia and Pest, who were easier to deal with. Instead, he chose to deal with him together with Her Highness. From this, it could be seen that Maxwell's strength was second only to Her Highness. In other words, Maxwell also possessed a 4-digit ranking. One must know that in the box court, a 4-digit ranking was the level of those famous Asura gods and Buddhas. Even a portion of the strongest existences possessed a 4-digit ranking. Although they were all 4-digit ranking, there was a huge difference between the peak existences and the lowest existences. However, since they were both 4-digit ranking, it meant that Her Highness and Maxwell were both stronger than ordinary deities. Under such circumstances, being pincered by two 4-digit ranking existences, even Noah had no choice but to become serious. Seeing the fist carrying astonishing power smashing mercilessly toward his head, Noah was just about to retreat when an aura suddenly flashed behind him. It was captured by Noah's transcendent perception ability. Maxwell appeared behind Noah at some point in time, and there was a mechanical expression on his face as if he had been frozen by ice. He was holding a scorching hot stream of flames in one hand and an extreme cold stream in the other. It was as if he was carrying magma and an ice river. He then blasted them at Noah's back forcefully. Firstly, there was Her Highness' fist that was capable of destroying mountains and rivers and splitting the sea. Secondly, there was the attack of two streams of flames that were as hot as magma and as cold as glacier. Noah's eyes flickered when he was attacked by two existences whose abilities had reached 4 digits. The energy source in his body instantly turned into a source of divine power, allowing divine power to flow through his body like a torrent. Soon after, in Noah's mind, the stone plate with 10 patterns connected to it turned and pointed toward the phoenix's incarnation. In the next second, Noah's entire body seemed to have turned into a phantom. Carrying a mirage-like light and shadow, he instantly disappeared from where he was at a speed that could not be seen with the naked eye. As soon as he disappeared, His Highness' fist immediately collided with Maxwell's flame stream and cold stream, colliding with each other. Seeing this, the two of them were shocked. They quickly stopped and withdrew the attacks in their hands. However, almost at the same time, Maxwell's expression trembled. Without any hesitation, he leaped forward and hugged His Highness, who couldn't react in time, and also disappeared on the spot. In the blink of an eye, Noah, who had turned into a phantom, suddenly appeared at Her Highness' original position. He threw out a punch, but it landed in the air. Oh! Noah raised his eyebrows. He turned his head and looked in one direction. Over there, Maxwell, who was carrying Her Highness, flashed out of space without warning and landed on the ground. Seeing this, Noah turned his gaze to Maxwell. I see. You also know how to space jump. If Noah, who had an almost superb sensing ability, was approached by Maxwell, it would be impossible for him not to notice. If Maxwell could reach the level of Orpheus and White Yiksha, he might be able to hide from Noah's perception ability. But Maxwell was obviously not at that level. The evidence was that Noah could now clearly feel Maxwell's aura. When Maxwell flashed behind him and launched an attack, Noah also noticed his existence. Therefore, Maxwell was able to silently appear behind Noah a second before launching an attack without Noah noticing. It could only be a teleportation ability like space jump. You too, and that one called Ling too. Noah glanced at Her Highness. Among your subordinates, there are so many people with this kind of rare ability. You're mistaken about that. His Highness said in a seemingly relaxed and vigilant manner. Maxwell does know how to space jump, but Ling's ability is not space jump. She can only control the distance and do something similar to space jump. Control the distance. Noah said helplessly. Hey, isn't that an ability rarer than space jump? Stop talking nonsense. Maxwell said with an ugly expression. Hurry up and take down that human for me. If only it were that simple. Her Highness spread out her hands, but her mouth did not relax at all. He has a body that is not inferior to mine. Even if I don't use the gifted weapon because of my invulnerable body, it might not be the same for you. In addition, he can use an unknown power. My compatibility with him is too poor, so you'll be the main attacker. Maxwell did not respond, but his entire body was already swirling with raging flames and cold currents, causing the temperature of the entire space to fluctuate between high and low. Noah narrowed his eyes when he saw Maxwell controlling the two completely opposite powers of ice and fire at the same time without the slightest bit of awkwardness. To be able to control ice and fire at the same time without a trace of awkwardness, it must be a power caused by an ability. Is it the ability to control the temperature? Or is it the ability to control the temperature? It can only be one of these two, right? Noah's guess was correct. Although the ability Maxwell used was fire and ice, its main body was the energy produced by the temperature difference. Through controlling the forward and reverse of the temperature difference, he could create the ability of fire and ice. That was the main body of Maxwell's ability. The space jump ability was also linked to this ability. Maxwell used the temperature difference to shatter the realm between ice and fire, thus shattering space and achieving the goal of space jumping. In short, it was a power similar to the realm. Therefore, Maxwell could also use his own power to open the realm door and achieve large-scale teleportation. If the two-headed dragon group that attacked the Eastern District and the army with an abnormal number of numbers appeared, they would have definitely been discovered before they appeared. However, their appearance was extremely sudden. Even White Yiksha only noticed after the fact. It was definitely this guy's doing. Noah's guess was correct again. The person in charge of attacking the Eastern District was Maxwell. It was this guy who opened the realm door and teleported the two-headed dragon army to the Eastern District. Then, the two-headed dragon group that thirsted for slaughter attacked the Eastern District in an attempt to attack the Eastern District of the Box Court. One is invulnerable, and the other is space jumping. How troublesome. That was what Noah was thinking, but there was another aspect that made him feel uneasy. That seal should be undoing, right? Noah's keen intuition told him. If Ling continued to fiddle with it, something incredible would definitely appear. That thing would even threaten Noah. I have to end this quickly. When such a thought emerged in Noah's mind, Noah's figure once again turned into an illusion. The illusion suddenly charged forward, causing a series of light and shadow to flash in succession wherever Noah passed, even causing the sound of air being torn apart. The avatar named Phoenix could bring the user the ability to move at lightning speed. However, it was not just a simple increase in speed, but also a reduction in the time needed to move, reaching the realm of time manipulation. Therefore, when Noah's figure appeared in front of Her Highness and Maxwell and released the lightning speed in order to attack, Her Highness and Maxwell only reacted. However, it was a bit too late to react now. Whoosh! With the sound of a strong wind, a heavy punch was thrown out, blasting Maxwell's head. Bang! Maxwell's head suddenly exploded and was blasted into pieces. Chapter 1377. Bang! Accompanied by a crisp muffled explosion, Maxwell's entire head was blasted apart by Noah's LV-5 ability, exploding into pieces of flesh that filled the sky. His Royal Highness on the side only saw a blur in front of his eyes, and then, Noah's figure suddenly appeared in front of him and Maxwell, and blasted out a powerful punch, blowing Maxwell's head apart. Looking at Maxwell, whose entire head was blown apart, His Royal Highness's heart trembled wildly. If that punch had been aimed at His Royal Highness, then, relying on his physical performance that was close to breaking the rules, His Royal Highness should not have been like Maxwell, where his head was directly blown apart. However, serious injuries were unavoidable. Just like in the previous battle. Noah, with a terrifying speed that even His Royal Highness could not detect, instantly closed the distance and launched an attack, which was basically impossible to dodge. The reason why he used the word basic to describe it was because the authority of seraphic speed was too high. If he attacked while maintaining seraphic speed, the attack would definitely deviate due to the abnormal speed. Therefore, he had to first deactivate seraphic speed before attacking. Therefore, at the moment of the attack, he could still react. If His Highness was like Luo Hao and Tony, who had gone through many years of tempering to be able to see through the lightning speed, then the use of the Phoenix incarnation would be greatly reduced. Unfortunately, His Royal Highness and 16 Knights belonged to the same type. They both relied on their physical performance to fight, which is to say, they relied on their innate talent, and were simply lacking in skills. Under such circumstances, His Highness did not even possess exquisite martial arts skills, let alone the ability of the mind's eye that could only be trained over a long period of time. Therefore, for His Royal Highness, Godspeed was simply an unsolvable existence. Relying only on this authority, Noah could easily take down His Royal Highness. Sensing this, His Highness' heart trembled again and again. Finally, he clenched his teeth hatefully and swung his fist toward Noah, who had blasted Maxwell's head apart with a punch. It was accompanied by a whistling wind. Whoosh! Along with the sound of the wind, His Royal Highness's fist suddenly lost its target and fell into the air just before it touched Noah's body. In the extremely soft sound of breaking the air, a phantom of light and shadow drew a beautiful arc in the air, and finally, flashed behind His Royal Highness. "It's over." Such a voice was transmitted into the ears of His Highness, who had swung out a powerful fist and had yet to finish his attack. At this moment, His Royal Highness's heart surged with an unprecedented crisis. His Royal Highness had reason to believe. In the next second, the attack that announced his death would mercilessly strike his defenseless back. At this moment, His Royal Highness encountered a more real danger than the previous battle. In fact, Noah had His Royal Highness's mind. Looking at His Royal Highness's defenseless back, Noah's eyes flashed with a cold light, and his whole body rolled with a rich divine power. "All evildoers, be afraid of my power. Now, I shall obtain the majesty of 10 mountains, the strength of 100 rivers, and the strength of 1,000 dragons. The majestic me shall raise the ferocious power of dragon slaying." The stone plate that was originally pointing at the phoenix suddenly turned and pointed at the dragon emperor. Then, Noah clenched his fist, and with the blessing of the LV5 ability value, he gathered the power comparable to a dragon's power in this moment into this blow. In the sound of the explosion, he waved his fist like a cannonball. An astonishing roar resounded throughout the sea of stars. The terrifying blow set off a terrible impact, and the ground in the sea of stars was shattered, stirring up a thick cloud of dust and gravel. The whole palace suddenly trembled and shook in all directions. "Kacha kacha kacha." Amidst the cracking sounds that caused one's teeth to ache, numerous cracks slowly spread out on the ground from the center of the dense sand and rock fragments. It was like a spider web that covered the entire ground in the blink of an eye. Even the surrounding walls were affected, causing the cracks on the ground to spread along the walls and gradually spread upwards. Not long after, the entire sea of stars was covered with crisscrossing cracks. In that instant, the tremor caused the palace of Salamandra far above to sway slightly. Many people in the palace of Salamandra thought that the capital of glorious flames had been attacked again. For a moment, it caused many people to panic, and mournful cries and exclamations could be heard. In a while, the people in the palace of Salamandra would be alarmed, and the military police would be attracted. "Your Royal Highness." Glea and Aurora, who were fighting against Letitia and Pest, both cried out in alarm. "Ugh!" Letitia looked at the center of the berserk shockwaves. While controlling the shadow that had turned into a pair of wings to retreat, she let out a sound of being unable to bear it. "Is there a limit to my master's strength? Must you make it so world-shaking every single time?" Pest also spoke with a hateful tone. "That guy, could it be that he's not human at all?" As they spoke, Letitia, Pest, Glea, and Aurora hurriedly took advantage of the shock waves and retreated in all directions. After an unknown amount of time, the shock waves that wreaked havoc in the sea of stars gradually stopped, and the dense cloud of dust began to slowly recede. After that, an enormous crater appeared before everyone's eyes. Chapter 1378. Wang. Without any warning, the space around Noah suddenly flickered with golden ripples that were like water waves, and they were reflected in the space. Within the golden ripples, blades, swords, spears, halberds, and all kinds of treasures slowly emerged and pointed in the direction of His Highness and Maxwell. Waves of ancient and vicissitudes auras began to pervade the air from those blades, swords, spears, halberds and various other treasures. Sensing that ancient aura and seeing that extremely inconceivable scene, everyone present opened their eyes wide in succession. Bestowed weapons. Furthermore, all of them are of the divine spark grade. Aurora cried out involuntarily. "How is this possible?" Roar. Glea also let out a low roar in astonishment. That monster, not to mention Glea and Aurora, even Maxwell's expression turned slightly stiff. Her Highness also had a grave expression as she stared at those divine spark-grade bestowed weapons. In the Demon King Alliance, only His Highness and Belle were aware of Noah's possession of over 1,000 divine spark bestowal weapons, as they were paying close attention to Pest's news. As for Glea, Aurora and Maxwell, they still did not know about this matter. Naturally, they were all stunned by the inconceivable scene before their eyes. Even Letitia and Pest, who had already seen this scene many times, were left speechless, let alone the others. In front of everyone present, Noah sneered at Maxwell. "Although I do not know what kind of trick you are playing, as you can see, there are countless legendary grade weapons here. Furthermore, all of them are weapons that target the undying body. With so many weapons here, there will definitely be one that can kill you, right?" Maxwell's face twitched slightly, appearing somewhat distorted. Then, he calmed down and sneered. "You can give it a try." Seeing Maxwell's fearless appearance, Noah suddenly smiled. However, there was not the slightest trace of a smile in his pitch-black eyes. Bang! 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 In the next moment, following a series of gunshot-like noises, blades, swords, spears, halberds and various other treasures that were aimed at Her Highness and Maxwell suddenly shot out explosively. They sliced through the air and shot out like raindrops. Seeing this, Her Highness and Maxwell's bodies tensed up at the same time. In the next second, the two of them took completely different actions. "Have you forgotten?" Her Highness shouted in a low voice. She stepped forward and directly exposed her body. "Weapons are useless against me." After she said those words, the treasures that were like raindrops, one after another, landed on Her Highness. Clang, 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 clang. Amidst the crisp sounds of collisions, the treasures that landed on His Highness's body like bullets produced sparks one after another. Amidst the sparks, they were deflected away by His Highness's body. However, at this moment, golden ripples flickered around His Highness. Silver chains that flowed with golden light shot out from within. They were like silver venomous pythons as they coiled around His Highness with great agility. Her Highness was startled. Without any hesitation, she kicked the ground. With a bang, the ground cracked, and her body retreated. However, the treasured artifact called Enkidu once again streaked across the air. It nimbly circled in the air and swept toward Her Highness. As for Maxwell, at the same time as the treasures that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, he used a space jump and instantly disappeared from his original position. He let the treasures fall to the ground one by one, causing the ground to explode. "Escape." Noah stretched out a hand. "Let's see where you can escape to." Suddenly, a golden ripple spread out beside Noah, and a spear popped out. It was a long spear that was entirely crimson in color. Holding the crimson spear tightly, Noah raised it high and made a throwing motion. Pierce through. A flame-like aura rose from the spear. Gungnir. At the same time as releasing the treasured artifact's real name, Noah threw the blazing spear fiercely. Shio! The crimson spear suddenly turned into a meteor, cutting through the air and shooting forward. There, Maxwell's figure just happened to appear with the flames and snow, welcoming the spear's shooting. Thus, Maxwell was also suddenly shocked. He hurriedly used the flames and snow again, and used a space jump to disappear from his original position. However, at this moment, the spear that was shooting out like a meteor suddenly changed direction, turning into a flash of light, and shot straight in one direction. Gungnir. Also known as the Great God's Declaration. The weapon used by the main god Odin in Norse mythology. It was made by the dwarves using the branches of the world tree, symbolizing holiness and eternity. This godly spear did not exist as a spear used in hand-to-hand combat, but as a javelin used for throwing. It was very powerful. In mythology, there was a legend that when it was thrown, it was like a meteor cutting through the sky. Therefore, it was also known as the meteor spear. The ability of this spear was also quite simple and powerful. Once it was thrown, it would definitely hit the target. It was a godly spear that never missed. Therefore, even if Maxwell escaped to the ends of the earth, before this godly spear pierced through him, it would continue to chase after him. Whing! Accompanied by the flames and snow, Maxwell's figure appeared from the fluctuation of space. Shio! At the same time, Gungnir, that turned into a meteor, shot forward. Poochie! In the crisp sound of flesh tearing, Maxwell's chest was directly pierced through. Ah! Maxwell suddenly opened his eyes wide. His eyes were filled with confusion and disbelief. This was because Maxwell did not understand why he would immediately be attacked after performing a space jump. However, Noah did not give Maxwell time to solve his doubts. After all, although the relic named Gungnir had the ability to hit its target, it did not have the ability to break through immortality. Shio 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 shio. Therefore, the sound of air being pierced was heard continuously. A rain of relic fell from the sky, like a torrential downpour of arrows, covering Maxwell's body. Poochie 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 poochie. Blades, swords, spears, halberds, and various other relics suddenly pierced through Maxwell's body, causing him to instantly become riddled with holes. His whole body was filled with weapons, and he was nailed to the ground by the weapons that were bestowed by the Godhead, causing blood to splatter all over the ground. Her Highness, who was avoiding the pursuit of Enkidu, saw this scene and her expression suddenly changed. However, all of a sudden, Her Highness' attention was completely diverted, and her body momentarily paused. It was also in this moment of pause that the chains that were flickering with golden light that were as nimble as poisonous pythons that were chasing after her wrapped around her body. They directly surrounded the space around Her Highness and continuously coiled up, sealing off all of Her Highness' escape routes. Her Highness did not even have the time to react before those chains had already wrapped around her body. However, what happened next made Noah somewhat surprised. Clang! Her Highness' body suddenly burst with a dazzling light. The light was like a layer of light film, covering the outline of Her Highness' body. The chains that were flickering with golden light that were preparing to wrap around Her Highness' body had just come into contact with the light on the outline of Her Highness' body, and they were completely frozen in space. Clang 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 clang. As if they were knocked away by something heavy, the Enkidu that was originally wrapping around Her Highness' body seemed to have been broken, and one by one they were sent flying, turning into bursts of light particles, dissipating into the air and returning to the treasury. This scene made everyone present, including Noah and Her Highness, stunned. Chapter 1379. Silence. Deathly silence. Everyone present looked at His Highness, who was enveloped in a layer of light that completely repelled the binding of the Heavenlock, Enkidu. All of a sudden, everyone fell into a state of shock. Even if it was His Highness, it would still be the same. Under such circumstances, the radiance around Her Highness gradually disappeared. His Highness raised his hand and looked at the layer of light that was gradually disappearing from his body. His Highness laughed in a somewhat mocking manner. Originally, I was worried that a weapon like the Enkidu that only has binding effects against divinities would be effective against me. It seems that the power of this invulnerability blessing is even greater than what I had imagined. Hearing that, the reactions of the people present were all different. Letitia and Pest had grave expressions on their faces. Glea and Aurora had pleasantly surprised expressions. Only Noah stared closely at His Highness. After a while, he indifferently spoke. Invulnerability blessing. I'm afraid that's not it. His Highness, who was about to lower his hand, slightly paused. The so-called invulnerability, as the name suggests, means that no sharp blades can pierce through one's body. If your blessing is truly invulnerability, then the Enkidu that does not belong to this concept should be able to take effect. Noah's gaze was directed toward His Highness. And now, since even the Enkidu has no effect on you, then can I assume that the power residing in your body is not some invulnerable thing, but rather, it can reflect all the weapons in the world. Hearing that, His Highness grew silent. It was not only His Highness. Even Glea, Aurora, and Pest had sunk into silence. Repelling all weapons in the world. Letitia's heart moved. Traces of astonishment began to appear in her eyes as she looked at His Highness. It can't be that you, sensing the astonishment in Letitia's eyes, His Highness' heart sank slightly. He still remembered that when he first appeared in front of Noah with his true appearance, His Highness had introduced him as such. Although I can't say my real name, everyone calls me Your Highness, so please take care of me. In other words, this so-called Your Highness was not the name of the prince, but just a title of respect. As for His Highness's real name, other than a small number of people who knew about it, the rest of the people did not know. However, at this very moment, Noah had vaguely guessed His Highness' real name. In India, where Indian mythology is popular, there is a sect called Hinduism. This sect advocates the doctrine of the Trinity, believing that the world was created by the three supreme gods. Noah looked up. These three supreme gods are also known as the three gods of Hinduism. They are named Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu respectively. Among them, Brahma is in charge of creation, Shiva is in charge of destruction, and Vishnu is in charge of protection. He is the god who maintains the order and peace of the world. He often incarnates into various images to save the world in danger. Hearing Noah's words, His Highness' eyes began to flicker. As for Noah, it was as if he didn't notice anything and continued to speak. There are many incarnations of Vishnu, and there is no unified overview. However, the world knows that Vishnu has saved the world in 10 incarnations. And among these 10 incarnations, the 4th incarnation is the man-lion, which is also the lion-man. It is a half-man, half-lion mythological beast. Noah looked at His Highness and said word by word. His name is Roximo, an incarnation of the over-god that can repel all weapons in the world. If it's him, then even if it's a godhead-grade bestowment weapon, or even a binding weapon like the Enkidu, it should be able to repel all of them equally, right? His Highness' eyebrows suddenly twitched, and he spoke with a fake smile. In other words, you think I am the man-lion Rahimo? No, no matter how I look at you, you don't look like the man-lion Rahimo. Furthermore, you've said it yourself, you've only been born for less than 3 years. How could you possibly be the man-lion Rahimo? Noah directly denied. However, he said those words with a hidden intention. However, if I were to consider you as one of the other incarnations of Vishnu, then, assuming that you are able to borrow the power of Vishnu's 4th incarnation through some sort of method, that shouldn't be excessive, right? After saying those words, Noah first closed his eyes. Then, he suddenly opened his eyes. For example, the 10th incarnation of Vishnu that is said to only descend upon the world in the form of a young human hero Galgi. Once those words were said, His Highness' expression immediately changed slightly. Even Letitia, Pest, Glea and Aurora's expressions changed. It would appear that I've guessed correctly, Noah sneered. The 10th incarnation of Vishnu, the hero who saved the world from the apocalypse, Galgi, you've hidden yourself quite well. His Highness. No. He should be called Galgi. The apocalyptic hero named Galgi slightly clenched his fist. His expression became somewhat uncertain. After a long while, as if he had given up on something, he lowered his hand and laughed bitterly. Just based on the fact that I can deflect Enkidu, which is to say, deflect all weapons, how can you be certain that I am Galgi? Oh. Noah said with a smile that was not a smile. Do you think that my guess is wrong? No, you're not wrong. Now that things have come to this, there is no need to continue hiding it, a magnanimous smile appeared on Galji's face. That's right, I am Galji. Your guess is also correct. I am able to make the incarnation of Naruximo, the man-lion that can deflect all weapons in the world, whether it is man-made, divine, or star-made. Furthermore, I am using the Leo constellation Sun Sovereign as a medium. Galji's words caused Letitia to hatefully bite her lips. The Leo constellation Sun Sovereign. That was a gift from the former member of No Name, the divine beast Ritian Lion. Now, the Sun Sovereign had fallen into Galji's hands. This also proved that the Demon King Alliance was the mastermind behind the scenes that caused No Name to fall to its current state. When she thought of this, Letitia had a strong urge to question Galji. What should she question? Naturally, it was about the whereabouts of the other members of the community who were taken away. However, before Letitia could question him, Galji spoke first. Galji said to Noah, "Do you know about the simulated star map, another cosmology?" The unfamiliar term caused Noah to raise his eyebrows slightly. At this time, Letitia and Pest, mixed with the Black Shadow and Black Wind respectively, landed beside Noah. Master, Letitia looked closely at Galji. While lowering her voice, she explained to Noah, the simulated star map, another cosmology. The so-called another cosmology refers to a cosmology that exists alone. It can be understood as a kind of infinite magnification of one's own cosmology to interfere with external matters. Those who have this kind of gift often have the ability to become the center of a group of gods. A cosmogony that exists alone. Noah was a little surprised. The cosmology was also the so-called worldview. Perhaps it was difficult to understand, but it could be understood as the embodiment of a myth. For example, Greek mythology, Roman mythology, Norse mythology, Hindu mythology, Persian mythology, Celtic mythology, and so on. A myth was a kind of cosmology, a kind of worldview. Thus, if the simulated star map, another cosmology, was an infinitely magnifying cosmology, then it would not be strange at all for the person who possessed the simulated star map, another cosmology, to possess the ability to become the center of a group of gods. Every simulated star map, another cosmology, ability is naturally different, said Galji. I possess the simulated star map, another cosmology, ability. It is capable of freeing the inheritance corresponding to the Sun Sovereign in my hands. By possessing the man-lion Naruximo's incarnation in my body and borrowing the power to repel all weapons in the world, I obtained the inheritance of the Sun Sovereign in Leo. Among them, the sovereignty of the Leo constellation Sun was able to take the fourth incarnation, the man-lion Naruximo, which reflects all weapons in the world, into himself, regardless of whether it was man-made, god-made or star-made, and overturn the fate of being affected by weapons. That power was so strong that even the restraint-type Enkidu was bounced off without discrimination. One could imagine how powerful a gift the so-called another cosmology would be. Originally, Noah thought that even if his noble artifact could not penetrate Galji's body, he should still be able to injure Galji if he released his true name. However, now it seemed that as long as it was a weapon, then even if it had an additional effect, even if it was the true name release of the noble artifact, it should not be able to injure this post-apocalyptic hero god under the blessing of the another cosmology and the incarnation of the supreme god in Hindu mythology, right? However, on the other hand, as long as I don't use a weapon, then it should be fine, right? A cold glint flashed in Noah's eyes. Then, I'll send you to hell with my next attack. Hearing this, Galji's heart tightened. He clenched his fists and stared at Noah with a vigilant expression. Glea and Aurora also flew to Galji's side. Their bodies surged with an astonishing aura, and they entered the highest level of alert. Affected by the three of them, a surging black shadow surged behind Letitia, and a violent black wind rose from Pest's body. Both sides were about to attack at any moment. Just at this moment, a strange phenomenon occurred. Rumble. All of a sudden, the entire ground started to tremble without any reason. Moreover, the trembling became more and more intense, causing the cracks that filled the sea of stars to expand bit by bit. In the end, the entire sea of stars started to shake violently and collapse. The intensity of the earthquake even caught Noah and the others off guard. Their bodies became unstable, and they either fell to the ground or knelt down on one knee. Only then did they manage to stabilize their bodies. What's going on? Noah stood up in astonishment. What a powerful earthquake. This can't be a naturally occurring earthquake, right? The source of the earthquake is nearby. Letitia's expression changed drastically. Could it be that the seal has been released? Letitia was not the only one who thought so. Even Her Highness, Glea, and Aurora glanced at each other. An unprecedented graveness and fear appeared in their eyes. The seal. Her Highness muttered. Has it finally been released? The powerful earthquake continued to escalate. It caused Noah and the others to involuntarily fall into a passive state of shaking. With no other choice, Noah, Letitia, and Pest flew into the sky at the same time. They floated in midair. Her Highness and Aurora also rode on Glea's back. With Glea's support, they flew into the air. Kacha kacha kacha. The powerful tremors caused the sea of stars that was already filled with cracks to let out teeth-numbing cracking sounds, causing the cracks to expand unceasingly. Bang! Finally, with a muffled explosion, the entire sea of stars exploded. It turned into rubble and fragments that sunk down layer by layer. Similarly, the ceiling also sunk down. The sea of stars was beneath the palace to begin with. With this collapse, the ground above the palace naturally sunk down. Seeing the rubble that was even larger and heavier than rocks smashing down from above, everyone was slightly startled. They all displayed their abilities. Letitia. Pest. Noah promptly called out. All of you, come here. Hearing Noah's voice, Letitia immediately snuggled her seductive and mature body into Noah's embrace without the slightest hesitation. Noah hugged her. As for Pest, she had an expression of unwillingness. However, after being glared at by Letitia, her entire body trembled. She could only clench her teeth and also throw herself into Noah's embrace with an aggrieved expression. Hugging the two girls, Noah's entire body fluctuated with the aura of divine power. I am the conqueror who can defeat 1,000 with 100, 10,000 with 1,000, and 10,000 with 10,000. Now, for the sake of me who stands on the side of justice, please shine brightly and bestow me with divine power. In Noah's heart, the stone plate with 10 patterns connected to it rotated and pointed at the incarnation of lightning. In the next instant, Noah, who was hugging the two girls, transformed into a bolt of lightning and soared into the sky. Bang 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 bang. Wherever the lightning passed, huge pieces of debris that were falling from the sky were suddenly blasted apart, accompanied by gravel and dust that continued to fall downwards. Lightning, whose momentum did not decrease, continued to rush upwards. Not long after, it flashed to the ground and once again saw the light of day. Roar, ooh, 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 ooh. On the other hand, Gria, who had transformed into a pitch-black griffin, carried Galgi and Aurora. He let out an extremely imposing roar and soared into the sky like a meteor. He smashed through the rubble along the way and similarly charged out of the underground, arriving on the surface. As soon as they reached the ground, everyone saw it. They saw Salamandra's palace also shaking violently and collapsing bit by bit. In the palace, the members of Salamandra were in a state of panic. Run! Run! Quick! Run towards the exit. Wyverns that can fly, quickly carry the wounded who can't move. Quick! Hurry up! The entire palace of Salamandra was in chaos. However, Noah and the others did not notice this scene. This was because they were completely attracted by another scene. Chapter 1381. Rumble. An unprecedentedly violent earthquake descended upon the entire blazing flame capital, causing the city, which was originally in ruins and chaotic like a war, to sink a layer into the ground, letting out a sorrowful cry that was incomprehensible to humans. Buildings that were originally in good condition collapsed one after another. Streets that were originally in a mess suddenly burst open. Residents who were originally relieved because of the end of the war fell into panic. Many of the ironworks that had been preserved with great difficulty were involved in the disaster. Just like that, the entire blazing flame capital seemed to have reached its end. It was gradually destroyed in the violent earthquake as if it was about to be destroyed. If it was in the world of ordinary people, just an earthquake of this scale would be able to bury the entire city's residents under the ground and rubble, killing thousands of lives. Fortunately, this was not the world of ordinary people, but the tyrannical world of various Asuras and Buddhas. Due to the previous attack by the Demon King Alliance, the ordinary residents in Blazing Flame Capital had already been evacuated and had gone to seek refuge. They had not been transferred back yet, which was a great blessing in the misfortune. Among the remaining people, they either had powerful blessings and could be used as combatants, or were members of Salamandra. They were not ordinary people who would be affected by a mere earthquake. Thus, under the organization of Salamandra, the wounded were efficiently rescued, and the people did not suffer much damage. However, the buildings and the like were in a terrible state. Paw! Accompanied by a crisp sound, the huge chandelier that stood in the center of Blazing Flame Capital, bringing warmth and fire to the entire city, finally fell to the ground under the strong earthquake and broke into pieces. The temperature of the entire Blazing Flame Capital suddenly dropped to freezing point at this moment, causing cold air to wreak havoc in every corner of the city. However, such cold air immediately dissipated in the next second. This was because, in Blazing Flame Capital, a volcano that was sitting in it suddenly trembled, and the top exploded. Bang! Along with a deafening roar, the volcano suddenly erupted, causing scorching hot magma mixed with thick smoke to flow out of the volcano's crater. That scene was as if the exit to hell had been opened. It was terrifying. In the brilliant flame city, the people who were still there stared blankly at the volcano that had suddenly erupted. They watched as the magma that filled the sky began to surge. After a while, they finally let out sorrowful cries and screams. Don't just stand there in a daze. At some point, Mandela had come to the center of everyone. Blue veins were bulging on his forehead as he roared madly. Hurry up and bring the wounded. Evacuate from Brilliant Flame City. Retreat. Yes. The members of Salamandra all had pale faces as they tried their best to respond. Then, they started to organize the evacuation. Beside Mandela, Shadora also looked at the erupting volcano with a pale face, and her delicate body began to tremble. Brother Mandela, could it be? Damn it. Mandela punched the wall next to him and glared at the erupting volcano, roaring in a low voice. The seal has been broken. An ancient demon king was sealed in the Blazing Flame Capital. As an elder of Salamandra, it was impossible for Mandela to not know about this matter. Shadora had only been informed of this matter after she became the leader of Salamandra and became the ruler of the North District. It was said that the other party was known as the oldest demon king in the final trial of mankind. It was said that the other party was a terrifying god slayer who had once defeated millions of gods. It was said that the other party was an existence that could create a god slayer with just his own blood. It was said that the other party was a figure that even the three-digit number of boxers couldn't do anything about. Azzy Dakar. The demonic dragon of the fire worship sect, the evil god in Persian mythology, the natural demon king. He was once one of the strongest species in boxers. Later, he transcended mythology and became an existence that only wanted to kill mankind, and could only be killed by mankind in the final trial. He was an existence above the three strongest species in boxers. 200 years ago, the demon king that was sealed by the great alliance of the Stratum rulers led by No Name was this three-dragon demonic dragon. The source of the two-headed dragon army that attacked the East District was him. Azi Dakar. After 200 years, the most ancient demon king, who stood above the three most powerful species of the box court and was ranked in the top 3 digits, had defeated more than 1 million deities. Even the beings in the top 3 digits couldn't do anything to him, had finally begun to awaken. But. Impossible. Shadora couldn't hide her fear as she spoke in a trembling voice. Undoubtedly, one of the keys to unlock the seal no longer exists. To unlock the three-headed dragon seal, the keys needed were the Starseed Dragon King's horn and No Name's flag. Among them, the Starseed Dragon King's horn was worn by Shadora. As for the community's flag that had lost its name, it had completely disappeared 3 years ago due to the attack of the unknown Demon King. So, how was the seal of the oldest Demon King unlocked? It wasn't impossible to unlock the seal without the key. However, without the key, unless the entire blazing flame capital was blown away, the three-headed dragon could not come out unless the ground was pried open and the seal was destroyed. However, now, the seal had been unlocked. Although Shadora hadn't seen the horror of the final trial of humans, the 3-digit number of demon kings was enough to frighten her. Why was the seal unlocked? Now is not the time to think about this. Mandela said decisively. Shadora, we must organize the people in Blazing Flame Capital to retreat. We must give up on this city. Shadora suddenly trembled all over. Give up on Blazing Flame Capital? Give up on the community's base. This was the root of Salamandra, don't hesitate. Shadora. Mandela directly knelt down and pressed on Shadora's shoulder as he spoke in an extremely anxious voice. The mystic dragon won't be interested in our city. It will only destroy this place until there is no life left before it leaves. If we retreat, we may have a chance to come back and rebuild in the future. But if we don't retreat, with Salamandra's power, only death will await us. In the past, Salamandra was a 4-digit upper-class community and could be said to be incomparably glorious. However, this kind of Salamandra, together with many other communities that were on par with them, fought against the 3-headed dragon together. In the end, they paid a terrible price and could only seal the 3-headed dragon. In the end, they were affected and were reduced to 5-digit numbers. Now, Salamandra was no longer a 4-digit upper-class community, and the allies that fought against the Demon Kings were all gone. Just relying on a 5-digit Salamandra to face the humans' final trial here would definitely not be able to obtain any results, and would only end up as a simple victim. Although he was the ruler of the hierarchy and had retreated before facing the Demon King, if it was any other time, it would be natural for him to be impeached and removed from his position. However, if the opponent was the oldest Demon King, no one would blame Salamandra. Knowing this clearly, Shadora could only bite her lips and nod heavily. Prepare to retreat. Chi! The lightning-like lightning tore through the air and heavily struck the body of the black griffin that had just rushed out of the ground. Dong! As if the space had been shattered, intense flames and a strong impact shook the air and spread in all directions. Ah! Greya and Aurora, who were emitting thick smoke all over as if they had been burnt, fell from the flames and crashed heavily onto the ground like kites with broken strings. After that, the intense flames gradually dissipated. There, Noah floated in the air, his hand tightly gripping a person's neck. It was none other than Galgi. Noah gritted his teeth as he looked at Galgi, who was struggling painfully in his hand. In the end, did you succeed? Chapter 1382. Og. In midair, Galgi, whose neck was tightly gripped by Noah, let out a muffled groan while firmly grasping Noah's hand that was gripping his neck. He kept exerting force in an attempt to pry open Noah's hand. If it were anyone else, facing Galgi's terrifying strength, let alone prying open his hand, it wouldn't be a problem for them to break his hand. However, at this moment, Noah had already used the Dragon Emperor transformation. With the physical ability comparable to a giant dragon, coupled with the LV5 strength buff, he completely ignored Galgi's strength that could shatter mountains and rivers and split the sea. Not only that, Noah also tightened his grip on Galgi's neck bit by bit, so that his hand began to sink into the flesh of Galgi's neck. Galgi could only let out a muffled groan and kept struggling to get up. Under such circumstances, Galgi's face began to lose its color as he gradually lost his air. His struggling hands and feet gradually became powerless. Your Highness. Seeing Galgi being forced to the end of his life by Noah step by step, Glea and Aurora's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. They struggled to get up, but their burnt bodies were unable to exert any strength and couldn't get up for a long time. Moreover, even if they could get up, Letitia and Pest, who were guarding against Glea and Aurora, would not let them hinder Noah. As time passed, Galgi's struggling limbs became weaker and weaker. In the end, he could only hang down and his consciousness became hazy. Oh. Noah said sarcastically. So, the hero of the apocalypse can also die from suffocation. This is really a big discovery, isn't it? Although he said so verbally, Noah did not relax his strength at all. He still increased his strength bit by bit. If this continues, Galgi will probably not be able to escape death, right? At this moment, a delicate voice suddenly sounded. Wait a minute. Hearing this voice, the tightening of Noah's hand slowed down a little. Letitia and Pest were also startled. They turned their heads and looked toward the source of the voice. In a corner of the ruined palace, Belle was standing there, looking at Noah with an anxious expression. Please stop, I have something to say. Ding. Glea and Aurora suddenly saw a glimmer of hope to save Galgi. However, Noah did not appreciate it and narrowed his eyes slightly. What? Do you want to save your highness? Then why don't you just use your distance-controlling ability to snatch him from me like you did the last few times? But if that's the case, we won't be able to negotiate, right? Belle's small face was tense. Looking at His Highness's dying appearance, she couldn't hide the anxiety in her eyes. In any case, stop what you're doing and have a good talk with me. I didn't use my ability. That should be enough to show my sincerity, right? Noah curled his lips in a non-committal manner, but he still let go of Galgi's hand. Galgi immediately followed the gravity and fell to the ground in a free fall. He clutched his neck and couldn't stop coughing and gasping for breath. Seeing that Galgi was released, Belle's expression eased up, but she didn't rush to Galgi. Instead, she looked at Noah and took a deep breath. After all, whether they could survive or not would depend on whether Belle could convince Noah or not. Although Belle had thought of using her grace to save His Highness and the others in retreat, her intuition told her that the same method would not work on Noah. This time, Noah, who had some understanding of Belle's ability, could definitely find a way to deal with her from the thousands of divine sparks. Belle believed in that. Therefore, Belle desperately suppressed the thought of using her ability to save everyone and chose to negotiate. Under Belle's gaze, Noah slowly floated down from the sky and landed in front of Galgi, who was clutching his neck and coughing non-stop. Noah glanced at Galgi, who was coughing non-stop, and raised his head to meet Belle's gaze. Then, what do you want to say? I want to reconcile with you, of course, Belle spoke nervously. You didn't choose to kill His Highness. can I assume that there is still room for reconciliation between us? Master. Letitia immediately took a step forward and spoke with hatred. We can't reconcile with them. I know what you want to say, Letitia. Noah raised his hand and stopped Letitia from speaking. They are the masterminds behind the destruction of our community. There is an irreconcilable grudge between us. So, we absolutely cannot reconcile with them here, right? Letitia didn't say anything. However, her deep red eyes revealed what she meant. However, at that moment, Pest spoke. Letitia, you are wrong, Pest said. Although it is true that the Demon King Alliance destroyed No Name, that has nothing to do with His Highness. Nothing to do with it. Letitia was stunned. On the other hand, Noah wasn't surprised at all, which made Belle cry out in surprise. Don't tell me you are not surprised. Why should I be surprised? Noah said matter-of-factly. If you are saying that you have nothing to do with the destruction of No Name, I have already expected that. After all, Galgi had already said that he hadn't lived for more than 3 years since he was born. However, the destruction of No Name was something that happened 3 years ago. In other words, Galgi indeed had nothing to do with the destruction of No Name. As for Belle, Glea, and Aurora, if they were all Galgi's private soldiers, then they probably had nothing to do with the destruction. You are truly a terrifying person. Seeing that Noah wasn't surprised in the slightest, a bitter expression appeared on Belle's face. She was most likely vexed as to why she would have a conflict with Noah, an existence outside the norm. However, she soon recovered. Actually, to tell you the truth, His Highness is only a chess piece created by the Demon King Alliance. Because His Highness is a hero capable of saving the world during the apocalyptic era, the upper echelons of the Demon King Alliance created His Highness in order to use His Highness to survive the apocalyptic era and protect themselves. That was why Galgi called himself a tool. Thus, His Highness, Elder Gu and Lady Aurora are all chess pieces of the Demon King Alliance, Belle said. If you view the Demon King Alliance as your enemy, then there is no reason for us to be your enemy. Hearing Belle's words, Letitia and Pest glanced at each other. That was because the two of them were able to hear the deeper meaning behind Belle's words. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. That was what Belle wanted to express. In other words, to Belle and the others, the Demon King Alliance was also their enemy. In other words, the 4 people led by Galgi had the intention of betraying the Demon King Alliance. Our actions up until now were only for self-preservation because we were unable to break free from the Demon King Alliance's control, Belle said with a deep voice. You've also met Maxwell, right? That guy is the one the Demon King Alliance used to monitor us. No wonder Maxwell didn't have the slightest bit of respect for Galgi and even said things like, you are still useful. Right now, we are the only ones here, Belle looked at Noah and said in an extremely serious manner. That's why I hope we can reach an agreement. Hearing that, Noah laughed in spite of himself. I must correct you on one point, Noah extended a finger. You said we have no reason to be enemies, but you were the ones who came looking for trouble with me first. Secondly, Noah extended a second finger. Even if you did it for the sake of self-preservation, who knows how many people have suffered because of your attack. Furthermore, you have even undone the seal. I'm afraid that blood will flow like a river in the future. Could it be that you want to use no choice to brush it off? What conditions do you have? Belle asked bluntly. No matter what conditions you have, we will consider them. Is that so? Noah smiled. Then, hand over our flag, your sovereignty over the sun and another cosmology. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.